OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Write it down. 7:30, OTB AM, Friday morning. Good morning to you, wherever it is you are at. We have an absolutely stacked show with a stacked lineup for you this morning. Johnny Ward, good morning to you.
Very good morning, Adrian.
Second morning running.
Yeah, slight apologies. I was at Kilbeggan last night, so I missed your local track. I missed the absolute mess. We have
we'll get into that.
Harry Maguire back on the back page again, and Man United 2-0 up, lose 5-2 over the two legs. So I missed the mess, but I'm looking forward to hearing you guys discuss what went wrong. And has it all gone wrong already for Ten Hag?
We'll get into that. Don't worry about it. I better introduce him because I get a weekly review, Johnny, into my WhatsApp inbox every Saturday afternoon.
WhatsApp
inbox. It could be several voice notes from Canada with a review of the show. And what's gone wrong, what's gone right. It can be a very critical review from this particular source in Canada. But sometimes it says, why is Colm jumping in before he gets introduced? So we'll welcome him on into the fold. Boohig.
Exaggerated
Good
kind
morning
of delay there.
Great to see you.
Morning, Johnny.
Pleasure to be in your company.
Morning, Johnny. Great to have you in 2 days in a row.
I was in Canada a few months ago. What a spot, like.
Yeah.
Toronto, unbelievable city.
My buddies just moved back there. For work, yeah, and I suppose at this age when you move somewhere like that's the 1980s kind of you're gone forever. Like
what part?
One phone call a month.
What part?
Toronto.
He's in Toronto.
I've never been to Canada.
Toronto it's just very expensive. Like
I've heard that.
It's the same. It has the echoes of Dublin, but like really friendly, beautiful city.
Yeah, the review I got at Toronto was it's just so perfect and well run that it's almost boring.
I didn't find it boring.
There's no edge to it. And you can go in this public park and you could have like 15 different groups all doing different things. And the idea was if that was in Ireland, like it would all just be messed up. Like you'd have gangs infiltrating other ones. There'd be a bit of
what part of Dublin
aggression. What part of Dublin?
Yeah. What gangs? Are the gangs hanging around the parks doing like yoga?
I don't think that's too much of a stretch.
Like you have one gang over here doing yoga and then another gang over here doing Pilates, and that they might sort of there could be a ruckus.
So in Canada, yeah, it just doesn't work out, like, you know. And but listen, there's enough to talk about. Johnny's already prompted us.
What happened
there?
No, before all of that, Kilbeggan.
Stop now. No.
Is that Kilbeggan? Yeah, Jim Sheridan was there.
Right.
I was like, what are you
movie
doing
director?
So I ended up
big racing man.
He owned Vinnie Rowe, who would have been a really good stayer for Dermot Wells, and really good horse. And Jim is working on. Told me he's working on the next kind of sequel, I guess, to the Sophie Tuscan de Plantier stuff. And he did mention how well it had done in terms of viewing figures. I don't know if you watched it.
Oh, yeah.
I watched all those Sophie Tuscan de Plantier stuff.
Yeah. The podcast, amazing.
The podcast, yeah. And he's working on, interestingly, when talking about Dublin gangs, he's working on, I think it's a movie about his mother's upbringing sort of in Sheriff Street direction and the Catholic upbringing that he had in the Catholic Ireland at that time. So it sounds very interesting. He kind of didn't have a lift home.
Did you give a spin, did you?
I was like, first of all, I don't drive. Like, so I was offering Jim Sheridan a lift home, even though I myself was getting a lift home from a guy who works in sort of for the old turf club. It would all have been very bizarre. Unfortunately, didn't materialise, but he was getting the train to Tullamore, then he was getting a lift to Kilbeggan. And it was just all very surreal. It was a really like run-of-the-mill race meet at your local track, as I'll mention again. And there was Jim Sheridan talking about the future and the past and what is past passing into come and all that. Lovely man.
There's just a quality to Johnny Ward meet that I think at some point or another we just need to make happen. I
did actually mention this with our old buddy Kieran Bradley, who's doing so well with his podcasts of late. I did mention this in a WhatsApp group yesterday. An idea for a podcast, right? Because I do podcasts, but they're basically like weekly stuff on what happened this week. But podcasts that you can download on road trips I love them. I really do love them. Like you know, Gubu and West Cork and all that stuff. Meeting the Murderer.
Oh yeah.
So I was thinking, I've become a bit fascinated by this is not a murder now. I've become a bit fascinated by Jerry Hutch.
You sit with us over there.
Come on, like.
Relax.
I've become a bit fascinated by
Lean into it.
by Jerry Hutch. Colm, you'll love this by the end. I've become a bit fascinated by Jerry Hutch.
Right.
How about doing a podcast where you see the other side? Why did you go down this route? Why are you in life in prison? What was your upbringing like? Have you any remorse? Go to the prison, delve deep into the soul of the murderer, and do an 8-part series sponsored by something.
Got let off during the week, of course, is the point that we were probably.
He wasn't a murderer
to make this.
No, but I'm just fascinated by him and his kind of reputation in the inner city. How people seem to love him.
Yeah,
I think Harry Maguire should have dealt with the ball much better from David De Gea's pass.
Beaten you to the punch on that line of. He's done a series of interviews with.
Not in Ireland, though.
Not in Ireland.
Colm's just disgusted over it.
He is. The more he's disgusted, the more I'm tempted to we just keep the conversation.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be a great show that way. Yeah.
Eating Harry Maguire.
Very interesting. What? Now that you're like,
my first thought, because the commentary team were saying like, oh, what's David De Gea doing passing that ball there? But I was thinking modern elite football, top level, like Harry Maguire called for the ball. He was in space when De Gea had the ball at his feet, and as many people said online, if De Gea had punted that up the field, which is his natural instinct to do, he would have been criticised for that. Oh, this guy can't play ball. So then he passes it into Maguire's feet. It's not the crispest of passes, I'll give him that, but it is good enough for a player of Maguire's calibre, because Maguire isn't a bad player. Like, when he plays for England, Maguire is decent. He gets the ball at his feet and then immediately closes down with 3 Sevilla players. Do one of two things, like let the ball beat you and turn your man, and have enough instinct and awareness around you that you know that these players are too close to you, so just turn around, or pass it straight back to De Gea. And then De Gea
you lost me as to Maguire look for the ball from De Gea, because then Sevilla immediately they go into the mode of like,
he had space.
If you watch it,
it doesn't matter.
If you watch it back, right, and even on the TV last night, they did an excellent piece of analysis on it. Just to point out, myself and Colm were over back on WhatsApp about it last night, and I did call that early on in relation to the goalkeeper. But there's an obsession, and I was listening to TalkSport on the way in, as I do every Friday morning. There's an obsession with saying it was Maguire's fault or it was De Gea's fault. There's loads of blame to go around. Like, they were both absolutely.
That's why we're here.
And De Gea plays it into Maguire, and as you say, you said it last night that he could just play it back to him. That wasn't an option.
It wasn't. It was 100%.
I would urge you to watch back the clip.
I've watched it several times in increasing incredulity. It was
not an option to pass back, because what they'd done was the Sevilla attackers had on 3 sides box Maguire in, so the only option was to turn tail and go back up the pitch, which is of course what he should have done.
They sprang a trap. Because they were told Maguire is going to be vulnerable on the ball, and probably De Gea.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I will say, like,
I haven't even seen him. He's not that bad on the ball. It's confidence. It's confidence.
The one thing that he's supposed to be okay at is good on the ball.
Yeah, but
like there wasn't a huge amount of evidence of it in that.
His thing is he's not a quick turner, right? So, but he should have had the wherewithal and ability to swivel on the ball.
It's also
like at that level. You're talking the top level of the game. Like, you're not being harsh.
I also think that, like, so De Gea had a part to play in each of the goals, right? Like
all 3,
very significant part in one of them particularly. But
which would imply that his confidence was kind of shot a bit after the first.
Well, I think that almost from like Ten Hag's point of view, like, it's nearly good for him that sort of stuff happened to De Gea last night, or happened to Maguire, because we should be talking this morning about United's major shortcomings. Well, and you'll talk about a couple of instances, but like, geez, looking at that game last night as a United fan, you must be hugely concerned. Like, the progress that had been made previously, none of this is new stuff, right? I think that when you talk about where United's issues are, you talk about they need a new goalkeeper, they need a new centre back, they need a playmaker with some experience and a bit of an attitude in the centre of the pitch, and they need an attacker.
Yeah, I was trying to, like,
it's not new news.
Concerning is a good word, definitely. And he said to me, I was like, this is an unbelievable result, like 3-0. And Adrian said to me, is this not a bit of a trend? Obviously, the instant reaction from me was like, what are you talking about? But then I was thinking, yeah, quite possibly. So the problem, I think, for Manchester United this season is that they peaked on the 26th of February, the Carabao Cup final. The very comfortable victory over Newcastle, were really good. They need that triangle of Casemiro in front, and behind him Varane and Martinez. And I was like, wow, this is the strongest Manchester United's core has been since probably the last great Alex Ferguson side in 2008-9. Really, really strong core of the team. And I was like, the future's bright. They actually won the next few games afterwards, but then the Liverpool in the year happened, and Anfield 7-0. Newcastle away a few weeks ago, Luke Shaw came out and his body language was the first real concern for me. Not the 7-0 at Anfield. Luke Shaw saying, we just didn't show up. The attitude was off. I don't know what happened. And we need to be better. And that's exactly what was said numerous times in the last decade since Alex Ferguson left. What's wrong?
He's just showing me a still.
Lara has very helpfully dropped the still into our teams group here, and the pass back to De Gea was not an option.
Okay, pass back was on. But the point is that. I've seen it loads of times.
I was going, Colm, what are you talking
I've
about?
sympathy for Maguire collecting the ball in that situation, actually, because one mistake and you're in massive trouble.
You just flip and you go back up the pitch, right? That's what most footballers do. But at the same time, when I say there's a bit of blame to go out, there's a bit of blame for De Gea, because I would say he knows who he's passing it to. This guy's not a player who's full of confidence. I would be thinking
Maguire. De Gea's vision. Maguire's free. We have this aerial view of everything that's happening.
I know, but it's not like he knows he's not passing the ball to Rio Ferdinand. Right? He knows who's in front of him.
Into this,
I have to say, as a goalkeeper, you're aware of the players that are around you at any given time. People choose to play passes at any given moment based on what they think at that time is the best option. You often see players refusing to pass this player over here because they've obviously made up their mind that that's not the best thing for the team.
Maguire's free, so in De Gea's head, Maguire's free, and then the right back is also free, so Wan-Bissaka is the next option. So in De Gea's head, he's playing a triangle to get out.
That still there doesn't quite feature the other...
No, he's coming in from the right-hand side.
The thing about Maguire is, it's like in life, if you have any confidence issues in terms of something that's happening, the slightest delay in your thought process there, he's in massive trouble, because the press is so, at the top level now, the press is so high and so aggressive that you just can't make a mistake, and Maguire's just still prone to that, because I think and I would have something, I don't think he should really be, and again I'm looking at it still, I don't think he should really be passing the ball in that area.
It's in some ways still is slightly deceptive in that the shape of three doesn't become fully clear to me
until he gets the ball.
Until De Gea passes.
Do you think that De Gea shouldn't have passed that ball to anyone?
Well, you see, you have 3 players high up the pitch initially, so that means that there are 8 players for the rest of the pitch. So Man United probably have an edge elsewhere up the pitch.
Yeah, but your split second point.
This is the thing about passing the ball out from the back. There's such a risk versus reward. Ireland did it for a good few games under Stephen Kenny and basically stopped doing it then from Bazunu, because it's not worth your while if you lose the ball in this situation. If you break the press, then you might be in a good situation, but you have to have unbelievable players to score from effectively your own goal line. You know what I mean? And if you lose the ball, you're screwed.
The Maguire confidence issue, I think, is definitely prevalent. It's so easy to cast this guy aside as being a complete donkey, in a waste of space, and he's one of the worst players that's ever represented Manchester United. He's had an awful time of it since he signed. It's not even 4 years since he joined the club.
I feel terrible
there's a best bits collated of his mistakes, and I agree with you. I feel really sorry for him, because Maguire earned that big money move to Manchester United. It wasn't like he was a no-hoper who won the lottery. No, he was really, really good for Hull and Leicester. It's easy to forget. And for England, when they got to the Euros final, England, and he was very good in defence, right? Buried his penalty in the shootout. One of the best penalties I've ever seen.
The England stuff I find a bit of a misnomer, I have to say, because he raises his game. Of all the countries to be talking about this, we've had players over the years who were average enough at club level and always raise their game to an unbelievable level when they can play for Ireland, and that's the case with Maguire. But the insinuation is he could go on to, he needs to get out of Man United.
That's my point.
Everybody is agreed on that. But there's this insinuation.
The biggest one.
There's this insinuation that if he goes to another club, that he's suddenly going to be the player that he plays for England. And I'm not 100% sure that's going to be true.
He needs to reset. And literally any other club will help him do that. And he may never be the same player as he was.
Sad thing as well is we might see the incident of the jockey who lost the race last night, and in terms of the social media reaction.
Yeah.
If Harry Maguire had a really bad injury in his next game and retired, he's tainted for the rest of his life now by not only the abuse he got, but he can't even go into a restaurant without thinking somebody's going to look at me. That's your man.
It's terrible.
It is. It's really sad. And as much as he's making a lot of money, that's actually a hard cross to bear for him.
And also, Johnny, his body language doesn't help him, because he has there's a sympathetic vibe to him, and he hunches his shoulders. He doesn't carry himself as tall as he actually is, and he kind of wears the mistake on his face.
Yeah.
But a fine defender on his day, and we were talking about this last week, Adrian. Like Dave McIntyre pointed out in commentary that the last 10 starts that Maguire had for United, they won the game. They had 5 clean sheets in a row in his last 5. So again, he's not even had a dreadful season. It's not nowhere near as bad as it was last season. But I feel bad for him. But the overall points are the Luke Shaw interview after Newcastle concerned me because he was like, "Oh, this is kind of the culture of the club." And Christian Eriksen spoke with BT Sport last night. Now, Eriksen wasn't fit to play, and United really missed Bruno Fernandes in midfield last night, as well as Varane and Martinez at the back. Fernandes was a big loss. I don't know what the omission story with Fred is. That I don't know why Fred suddenly isn't playing that much. I know maybe he's not fit enough, but that was a strange decision because with Fernandes
Somebody in
out,
there with a bit of physicality.
yeah, you still don't play Fred because Sabitzer is a bitty player. Like he's decent, but I don't know if he's the answer. And if United didn't sign him permanently in the summer. But he's a goal scoring midfielder, but they're playing him in the Fred role. And even then, when he's a goal scoring midfielder, he doesn't massively contribute to the overall play. So if United didn't sign him permanently in the summer, that wouldn't be a bad thing. So Eriksen talking to BT Sport last night was kind of like, we just didn't play well tonight, and it was kind of very political, the answer. And the question to him was like, was the attitude off? Did you not try? And he was like, oh no, I wouldn't say that. But there was no emotion, it was like, oh no, of course we tried very hard, but we just weren't very good today. And it reminded me of the dying days of the Arsene Wenger era at Arsenal, when they had poor result after poor result. And I remember Theo Walcott coming out on Monday night game, Sellers Park, poor defeat away to Crystal Palace. They lost 3-0, and he was just like, "Oh look, we'll go again. We'll go to the next game, and we'll try. Hopefully we'll be able to convert our chances. And there's no problem. We'll get better." And I've heard United players say that so often in the last decade. And I'd say Erik ten Hag is realising that there's a far larger cultural reboot required here than I initially thought.
Do you know their next 3 league games?
The first 3 quarters of the season was actually very positive outside of the first 2 games.
The next 3 league games, like they've Brighton, obviously. That was the game that Dan, our erstwhile friend, had booked to go to see Evan Ferguson, and of course, but maybe then, because their next 3 league games are Spurs away, Villa at home, and then Brighton away, followed by West Ham away. There's actually a very realistic chance that they might wobble in that top 4 battle now.
None of those games are easy games for United, and certainly on the basis of last night.
You'd argue that there's no real easy game for United at the moment because they've returned to inconsistency and you don't know what you're going to get with it. But at the other look, if you want to look at the overall season, like United are a point better off already.
It's good
this season in the Premier League. Hold on, they're a point better off already this season than they were in the whole of last season, and there's 8 games to go. And they have a trophy.
59 points from 30 is good when you've teams like Man City in the league. It's actually good.
They've won the League Cup, and they're on the cusp of getting to another final this weekend. They're probably going to finish top 4.
If they finish top 4, it's good. From where they've come from, it's a good season.
The problem, Johnny, they've pocketed it with disastrous results. So there's last night, Newcastle away, a couple of weeks ago, Anfield, the first 2 games of the season, Brighton and Brentford, and they're almost the standout moments of the season, even though it's overall been a very positive campaign.
Brian says, Colm, it was a pressing trap. De Gea has to have the awareness of that.
I really
you don't like that comment. That's questioning your football.
No. I'm surprised that so many people are criticising De Gea for a very simple pass to a free man.
Bohemian 29 says, whose tea is made with Colm's tears this morning?
It's Brayburn.
Good morning to you, Bohemian. Brian's wondering if Shane's gone into hiding. Are United still having a better season than Arsenal?
Shane's gone off the Crucible.
He's gone off to the Crucible, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very rounded man, Shane. Like, he's interested in a lot of different kind of peripheral sports, isn't he?
Peripheral sports, exactly.
We have a message
football
from Vinnie Perth, who's listening to the show.
Yeah.
Can I read it out?
Of course you can. Sure, it's your show.
Yes, Vinnie can.
Can I read this out, Vinnie?
Get in touch right now.
Maguire, when he played for Leicester, played maybe 10 yards deeper. So most things were in front of him. He would have had to play a certain style if he moved to get back to his best. Love your defending of him. I'm actually only reading this as I go, so I didn't edit this before. And love your defending of him. He's an excellent player. Now, you actually would not disagree that he's a poor player or anything like that. You think he's an okay player, do you, Maguire?
100%.
And
you can't have had the career that he's had without being an okay player.
Yeah.
But there are a series of factors at the minute that means he just needs to get out of there. I'm sure, do you know what I believe is the reality? And who am I to question what Vinnie Perth has to say? But we don't actually know how good Harry Maguire 2023 is. or how good or how bad.
Yeah,
he is.
that's true. Yeah, but there's such a big narrative around them, isn't there, and a big cloud that
They also
you
lost
almost
by
can't
3
judge them
goals,
objectively.
Like. They lost by 3 goals and
Totally,
2 goals
and actually,
up.
sorry, that's the thing. As like, I was complaining about this yesterday, that we kind of have this obsession of honing in on 1 point in a game, like the handball, and this is like 1 point in the game where De Gea passes the ball to Maguire, and was it the right thing to do? But as the agents already said, like the more concerning aspect is the overall display from Manchester United, who were insipid.
Trent Alexander-Arnold has made unbelievable mistakes all season, like in possession, out of possession, and peppered with some amazing play as well. And it doesn't get focused on as much. Every Maguire mistake just seems to be pounced on. He's an easy thing to target as well. I do feel sorry for him in that regard.
Fountainstown Forlan says, lads, get Johnny on the quiz today. Even he's better than Adrian, which is an awful insult to you, Johnny.
It's an awful insult to you, and I'm not even sure I am actually better than you. And I don't know how bad you are, but I'm probably worse. Yeah.
I have another comment here from Stephen Gormley, fan of the show. Maguire's body shape for receiving the ball was totally wrong.
Yeah, William Doyle says De Gea often gives that pass to Martinez like this, and there isn't a problem. And Brian says, how could he pass it back to De Gea? The back pass was blocked, which I think in hindsight now you have to accept was the case.
No, I think I have no problem with De Gea's choice to pass it out to Maguire.
But there was only, out of the 4 possible options, only one was open.
He was open when De Gea
Maguire
had the ball. Maguire was totally open. Slipped the ball into to Maguire. I would absolutely acknowledge that De Gea's pass could have been crisper, but Maguire should have dealt with that pass. You're talking that sorry to repeat it, but it's the very highest level of the game. Like.
Bit of blame for everybody to go around Colm.
Totally. But I don't understand why or how everyone jumped on De Gea.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, okay. There are an awful lot of comments coming in about this, and people are exercised by it, and we might have to come back to it.
How they respond now in the league will be compelling, because they're in a great position for the top 4, but they could blow it.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
They
I
really
mean, on the
could
evidence
blow it
last
out.
night, who knows what happens. You're watching, it's gone 10 to 8, you're watching OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. Here's what's coming up on the show for you this morning. It's Johnny and myself right through until 10 o'clock. We'll have Ronan O'Gara in just a couple of moments' time from La Rochelle. Some reflections on last weekend, and looking ahead as well to the latter stages of the Heineken Cup and plenty more. If you have more questions, comments for Rog, do get them into us. Nedum Onuoha will be with us after 8 o'clock, and we'll be having plenty more Manchester United, plenty more blame to go around. Nedum, I think, it'll be one of the main things we'll be talking to him about, and obviously what an exciting run of games ahead for Man City as well, which we will touch on. GA writer Maurice Brosnan will be with us at 8:30. Another interesting weekend of Gaelic football. And at Caplice at 10 to 9 on Ireland v England this weekend. We'll have a Friday Firepit for you at 9:10. So if you've any, what are we discussing on the Firepit? We'd like to give people a bit of a nod on this.
Yeah, well, we didn't get into the Arsenal video that went viral there during the week with the young fan and the players. We'll talk about that, and then kind of the overall online abuse that seems so prevalent and increasingly so in sport and in society, I suppose, as a whole. Yesterday, myself, Johnny and Shane posited the position that is the League of Ireland cool? And then that can lend itself into thinking, who for you, cool sports people? Who do you admire? Who do you like the colour of the jib of? And the opposite, who do you not admire? So a few things there. And the rest then is to your own creativity, improvisational skills, and just enjoy it. Now, Johnny, Jack Byrne, is he going to go?
Yeah, it looks like Rovers have decided that short of getting a fortune for him, that they could do with Jack for their bid to get back to probably the Conference League group stages realistically. And initially the offer from Charlotte, they increased it a lot. I think there was, I don't know, a ballpark figure of bandied about of about $500,000. The way Jack is playing for Shamrock Rovers this season, his stats are off the charts, and sometimes it's, as much as he's a playmaker, sometimes it's not even that obvious how off the charts his stats are relative to everyone else in the league. Now Rovers have so many ball players. I think Vinny said yesterday they'd still win the league by 10 points. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But in Europe, and also Jack's quality at set pieces is so good. Like he's world class delivery at set pieces, 100%. I think Shamrock Rovers, Adrian, you were sort of saying that. I think you did pop at them that they can qualify and he can sit on the bench. And I actually met a Shamrock Rovers fan in Kilbeggan who said that the last time he met Dan was in Malta, And I was like, well, that was the night you basically threw in the towel. And Shamrock Rovers sort of did. They put out a second string team, but the thing for Rovers is to get to the group, because that's where the money is, and take it from there. I think this year
That's where the money is, and then they don't go after the results.
I think this year, in fairness to Rovers, I kind of see what they were doing at the time, because realistically they wanted to win the league to get back to that level this season and take it from there and be better, I think, if they get to group stages, which is still a big if. But Jack Byrne is massive for them, and I'd be very disappointed if the League of Ireland is cool, partly because we see people like Jack Byrne. For him it must have been very, very, very tempting. Jack would love living in America, I'd say, playing at that level, but Rovers seem to have held out, and that's pretty cool.
We'll have much more chat on that. And Colm, thanks a million for coming in. You'll be back to us later on. It's been a real pleasure. Your reluctance to talk to us there, to engage.
Threw the toys out of the proverbial.
Didn't he?
Like, I can't. If I went along with that, I wouldn't see. The show wouldn't be on the road. Like, you know, you gotta. Someone has to keep it going. And speaking of,
Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Adrian, morning.
How are you keeping? How's the form?
Good, yeah. Bright morning, sunshine over here, so can't complain, and ready to go, top 14 again tomorrow, so getting good now, getting exciting.
The string of cup finals that you often talk about is going pretty well for you. Another win at the weekend.
Yeah, it was great because we changed the team, 12 players different from the team that started against Saracens, so I think you find out a lot about people during those times when they're not playing, and they can potentially get grumpy, but there was no boy sulking. There was good energy out of the guys that weren't talking out for the Saracens game, so we trained well that week, and then those guys got a shot at it against Bayonne. We were average, but it's easy to be average, or to understand why we were average, because we lacked probably cohesion and harmony in trying to execute plays, but nothing wrong with their attitude, so it was a beneficial 80 minutes for us.
I think you said in the paper last week that you would watch Exeter if Jess didn't have any plans for you, and you were hoping that you might have to, you might get away from it. That was a pretty big defeat for them. Did you watch it live? Did you get a chance to watch it back, or what was the
Nah, it was great. It was actually her dad's 80th birthday, so she went home with 4 kids. I stayed with the eldest boy, so we had a magnificent weekend.
Sports Central.
Yeah. No fighting for the control. Yeah. No one who's going to take the dog for a walk. No one who's going to get the bread from the boulangerie. No nagging. Sunday free nagging. Fantastic.
That is the one beautiful thing about living in France. Just the habitual nature of just let's call it the boulangerie for bread. It sounds simple, but you're living the high life, Ronan.
Or even better, and it's good now because it's just, you know, you get that kind of salivating feeling in your mouth at this hour of the morning when you know that the mixed grill is coming back that night. So you have the French bread, you superset that with the sausages and the bacon, the black and white pudding and the eggs from it was Cork Airport this time, actually. Cork Bordeaux's up and running, so normally it's Dublin Airport, but if you can get the full Irish with the French bread, it's a winner.
You're like Richard Cooper and that old ad. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's breakfast time back home. Yeah, probably too young to remember that run. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Do you remember that, Adrian?
I do indeed.
That was Richard Cooper before he's.
I didn't know that bit actually.
Match, yeah.
Now we've segued sort of nicely away from the question. What did you watch, Exeter?
I did. They had a record defeat, in Leicester, obviously, and then obviously the fallout from Molly Woodburn's dismissal, and obviously Jack Nowell and a few of his teammates had a rant on Twitter and up before the disciplinary, so an eventful week, but it's all ended well, I think, from their point of view. Obviously a bit of financial fine, but common sense was seen, and no top players missing semi-final games.
With a game like that, and because the scoreline gets so far away, is there a point where you just turn it off from a trying to analyse the point of view, or how do you look at it that way? Yeah,
but they were a different team anyway, and Leicester had momentum, and it was one of those games where it'd have no consequences. No, there would be, that tape won't be revisited again. You know, there's plenty of other interesting images that need to be looked at before we tackle them.
I watched a little bit of the highlights of your own game, and I watched a bit of the highlights of the Toulouse match as well during the week. And obviously, with an eye to the semi-finals, Toulouse just like they can sort of win any which way you want. Like they go, was it 14 points to nil down after 10 minutes?
Nearly 21 as well.
Nearly 21.
Leon had a very good opportunity,
and they bring. Go on, sorry. Yeah. That's where they're better than any other team. They like when it gets messy. They like when it gets disorganised. They create scenarios to be able to replicate that in games throughout the week, and that's where they're very, very dangerous. And that's where DuPont is on a different wavelength. And the fact that he played the game last week in the 10. Yeah.
And
how was he in 10 next?
He looked easy. His tactical kicking probably is off the top 10, but everything else is good.
That little break for the try, like that, it nearly looked like a 12 in some ways.
Yeah, well, that's his physique would be not dissimilar to a lot of 12. He's a little pocket rocket, and he can carry hard in the 12. He's very fast, he's explosive, he's smart. I think you look at the game, and he's like one of those sports people that just stands out no matter what sport it is. If you look at, obviously, tennis is probably a bad example because there's a few of them, but in rugby there's probably John Alomu, Dan Carter, there'll be DuPont. They're the guys that mark the game in the biggest way.
Could he open up an avenue in terms of the sport going forward or is he just a total one-off where players are that bit more versatile in terms of where they can play?
Yeah, there's been a little bit of murmurs about this, but I think he is incredibly good, and I don't think you can kind of model anything on him because he's such a freak. These things have been a hybrid player, Swiss Army knife, and have a huge versatility and a great option for the bench. But the thing about Antoine Dupont, if you go through it probably coldly and accurately, there's a reason you could start him at 10, 12, 13, 14, 11 or 15 on his own merit, but he just gets more ball at 9 and has more impact at 9, and he's a petit general and he can run the show at 9, so that's where he plays. And it's like, I have my ball and you have your own ball, but my ball is going to do a lot more damage than your ball.
What sort of character is he actually?
He seems very humble. I don't really know him. I know he's friends with Gerg Aldridge. There was a lot of that generation, Giles, I think Boohig, Aldridge, DuPont, the second 9, I think, they're all from the same area in Oush, actually where Paul O'Connell got married, in near Toulouse. They all grew up there and they're played underage rugby together, but I think underage he was good, but I think when he moved from cast, obviously there's nothing to do with moving from cast and the timing with that, but when he probably early 20s, he just became a phenomenon.
Are we any closer to answering the question about what to do with him, Ronan, in terms of from a Leinster point of view, I suppose, particularly?
No, it's just not anyone's. It's anyone who comes up against him. That's bizarrely, when there's structured play, you potentially feel you can keep an eye on him, okay? And then where he becomes nearly unplayable is breaking balls, should we say, using a GA term, when the rugby ball falls on the ground and there's a little bit of chaos, a bounce pass or forward doesn't hold the ball, it dribbles on the ground, it squirts out of a ruck, and you're left with a one-on-one. All of a sudden he's gone up the pitch, bang, off his right foot, fend, gone.
So do you try to play more of a possession game then? Because obviously, I'm just thinking from a frame of reference of when Ireland played France, that wasn't really the case. A lot of kicking in the game. Do you try to ensure that essentially DuPont has as little as the ball of the ball as possible?
That's a simplistic way of looking at it, because he could also maybe touch it 3 times and set up 2 tries or 1. So yeah, possession is important, but then you don't really want to be playing too much in your own half against a team because of obviously the interpretation around the ruck. If you're in the 3-point zone, it's half a try, and it's a very soft half a try. If you're giving it up, and a kicker like Ramos just pops it over the post. So then if you kick loosey to them, they're deadly. So you're trying to keep as much control of where you give them the ball.
To move on the conversation, I wanted to ask you about the Jack Nienaber stuff. I don't know how much attention you paid to it, but your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was obviously, I wasn't expecting any announcement on Leinster coaches, so it was obviously an element of surprise. And then it's, when you think about it, it seems a very shrewd move, sharp move. A coach with a lot of hunger, and Leinster obviously do their homework, and they only go for the best in the world. So I suppose we just have to wait and see how it works out. There's obviously maybe implications in the fact that Andrew Goodman, I don't know where he is. Is he moving on, or is he, because he's incredibly highly spoken of in New Zealand? I coached him in the Crusaders, and brilliant coach, and I'm not too sure has Razor's coaching team been announced, but I would be pretty well. Sorry, I am sure he's in negotiations for being on that ticket.
Geez, that'd be a big loss
for Leinster. Yeah, it would, of course, but then I suppose they've never blocked a guy's ambition. If you're from New Zealand and you want to coach your country, they've always kind of backed the individual to do that, and then he's a young coach, he could easily come again, so maybe Goody wants to stay in Leinster, and he's extremely happy. I'm sure he is. He was there as a player, he's there as a coach, and he's guys the players want to play for him. But the show always goes on. Everyone is replaceable. That's the beauty of sport. But good people are hard to replace.
Some ticket if he stays there. It's the style of rugby that Nienaber has obviously been coached or been involved in coaching, whether it's Munster, South Africa, and then on to Leinster's. Like Leinster, there's a pretty big mix of styles there. Is it just a case that he comes in, you adopt the style of the head coach that's there, or how does that, in terms of him putting his stamp on it, or even from your own experience of working for different coaches with different styles? You often talk about the cattle, and he himself has mentioned about the you assess the quality of players that are at the group that you come into. Pretty good cattle at Leinster, but in terms of the style that he brings into it, what's your thought around how that fits in?
That's exactly the key point. Is you assess what you have to work with, and then you make decisions on what's being presented on the training paddock. So he most definitely has the cattle to play whatever he wants. There's different scenarios in your career as a coach that you're faced with certain restrictions or non-restrictions, and you adapt. Otherwise, I think you make an error, and it's very, very important as a coach that you analyse what you have and where you want to get, and can you get to it with this group of players? Because for me, that's what coaching is. You cannot have the same game plan depending on who you have. So to make a simple comparison, and fellas like Winnie Antonio, Will Skelton, Bottia, we play a different game that I'd be playing if I was coaching without those three.
Right. Assess what you have and adapt.
And get the best out of them. Keep doing what they're good at and trying to get more scenarios in a match that they're able to show what they're really good at.
Plenty of questions coming in here if you're on it. I'll put a couple of them to you. So we were talking a little bit at the top of the show about Manchester United and Harry Maguire particularly. I don't know if you've been...
big Man United fan in this house, yeah.
Yeah.
So
you were watching it.
Game against Seville last night.
Yeah.
Wow.
What did you? So the question here, I'll get to Edward Freeman. Ask Rog if he's ever been a coach of a side that just threw in the towel in a game like United last night, and what would your response be?
I just have to be so careful in terms of generalising or throwing in the towel. You know, I think that has so many different definitions for so many people, and I would probably find it hard to agree that a team is thrown in the towel. I need.
Is it a confidence collapse, Ronan? Like,
for me, that's a completely different topic, and I have a perfect example of that, and popped into my head watching that game last night with a certain player that I'm coaching in the same situation, like Harry Maguire, and it's completely all confidence, and that is exactly a perfect example of it when your mind wants to do it and your body can't do it, and you've been just eaten away, and the simple task becomes so difficult because you're devoid of all your automatic instincts and auto decision-making capacity that I can remember even as a player myself when I kicked in front of the post. It just looked so small, and then there was other moments in your career, thanks to confidence, that the post looks 50 metres apart.
And how do you rate your ability to turn that player around?
It's a great question. Depending on everyone's, I suppose, background and curve and learning curve and capacity to rebound is very different. So have we had this fall as a couple, shall we say, a couple, coach and player, and what did we do the last time to get ourselves out of this hole? Is it a new experience between us and we haven't worked our way out of it? Are the player and coach in unison on what they feel the issue is, or are we at loggerheads? If we're at loggerheads, it will never work, because there has to be an acceptance of the position, and if we're not united on the position, then we can never get where we need to get, and that is where the ruthless side of professional sport comes in. Do I change my system for one player, or can my player get up to speed into this system? It works for 14 others, but I can see a really upside to this guy if he gets it. So the definition of insanity is expecting to do doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So that is always at the forefront of my head when I'm coaching, and the fact where repeated errors or breakdown in visualising, performing the task means that there is not an understanding. If you understand something, you can get better at it. If you put into a position and you don't understand, you're for the next. That's for different through communication, talking about it, or going through the image, or going through, shall we say, world-class solutions of that image done by different players. So hopefully a combination of the three, you get to where you. But the most important thing is accepting that we're not where we are as a couple, and that we need to hopefully have the tools to deal with better in future.
Does any of this apply to Joey Carberry, or is it something completely different? If Joey Carberry rings you this morning about what should I do in terms of my future, I'm 27, it's not really working out at the moment, what do I do?
Well, me on the spot there, I haven't thought about that one. But I haven't monitored his games closely. I'm not too sure what his form in games like and what his little detail is, because I think what he has to really remember is that he's done it So it's there. He's not looking for a level that he hasn't got in the past. He needs to get back to that, but how can he get that? And it's probably more simple than you think, and it happened a lot quicker than other people think. But it's his capacity to repeat that consistently. And it's been blighted because of injury. It's been blighted probably because he feels he's not getting as many minutes as he needs. But that's why it's always, I think, reassuring for players who have tasted the top level. You're not asking them to do something they haven't done before, which usually they get on board with you straight away and they go, okay, coach, I'm up for this.
Yeah, it feels like Carberry needs wants to get back in the pitch and needs game time, and the more you look at Maguire, it feels like he needs to be almost removed from that. Certainly in the spotlight.
9 out of 10 people in that position, when they're given it, they're trying to do too much because they're trying to make up for lost time in their heads, and they're trying to prove people wrong. While, like the Dan Carter policy was do the simple things well over and over again, repeat them at speed, do the simple well over and over again. Then the easy situation where you can glide through will pop up, but if you force it, you look like a bit of a turkey on your backside.
This is the thing as well, like this is just the 3 pages in front of me, 3 papers in front of me, back page Maguire looking full of angst, back page Maguire and De Gea and Maguire, and it's like, was this all Maguire's fault? Like, and that's
it can't. That's just way too easy. You can't do that.
And that's what they do because he's an easy target and it notionally sells papers. And we've been talking about Maguire, and it's just like, yeah, it's all Maguire, and it's really, really hard for him to wake up this morning, even though it clearly wasn't all his fault.
Oh yeah, it's horrendous. There's no doubt about it. There's always examples of that where a guy gets absolutely lamped. You know, it's horrendous.
Yeah. Good luck against Claremont tomorrow. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Good to chat. Thanks you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Ronan O'Gara on the line there. And look at it. There's a study in the Harry Maguire stuff, and I would absolutely say that we have been as guilty as anybody at times when we're talking about Harry Maguire. But like, I definitely have felt over recent months that my main emotion towards him is just sympathy. That like, and I'm sure he doesn't want that either. But it's just
David
an awful.
Is frequently on because David knows him, and like, treat whatever about he's on so much money. Treat an individual with respect, whether you're on social media or anything else, because it's not easy to be in that position. And even you have the back page of the Herald where Chris Forrester is talking about how he's in a bad mental state. Chris Forrester was one of these players again whose career could have completely derailed. And like what Ronan was talking about there, the challenge he's facing, you need people around you to respect the individual and to be on a human level helpful to that person long before he or she can get back onto the pitch and play well, and just say, I want to get you back into a happy place in life, and then the rest will follow. And I think that's happened with Chris Forrester. And as a coach, you're not really, they can bring you to all the B license, A license, yada yada yada. Nobody can really coach that, and I guess you either have it or you don't. I would suspect Ronan may have that, even though he might be too humble to admit it.
In spades. 17 minutes past 8, you're watching OTBAM. We're delighted to have your company this morning. It's myself and Johnny with you until 10. OTBAM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. After the break, we're going to be chatting more football with Nedum Onuoha. First of all, our own Cameron Hill has been in conversation with yet another La Rochelle personality, Ultan Delan, about life at the club. You can catch the full chat over on the OTB Podcast Network and across our social channels.
And is he getting properly engaged in the training sessions? I've seen images of him, kicking a ball around, and he's talked about it on this show before. But is he right involved with the actual physical aspect, or does he take a step back?
What do you mean? As in, would he be ball carried and stuff?
Yeah. Is he running into contact with into land, for instance?
He might. I think it was. I'm trying to think. It was. I think it was the day before it comes around. Something like that. We did a walkthrough in the morning, and he just got glimpses of his career, I think. And he was getting the ball and doing little sidestep and carry as if he was the opposite 10. And lads got good enjoyment out of that. But no, he's a coach. Obviously, you do miss your good days and stuff. And he still has it though in some ways. So.
Are you just saying that now because you think he's going to be watching?
He's going to hear this. He's going to be like, what the hell is it? No.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Football Pod are hitting the road again, and we're delighted to announce that we're heading to Killarney for our first big show of the summer. All with thanks to AIB.
It was quality. It was a good one.
Join us for a brilliant night of football, chat and crack, with plenty of focus on the All-Ireland champions Kerry and the contenders who are coming for their throw.
Does it keep you up at night with not winning Sam Maguire?
No.
This is an exclusive off-air event and tickets are limited, so don't delay.
We have a great show ahead. We are going to get our special guest out tonight.
Tickets are €20, including booking fee. Go to offtheball.com/event now. The Football Pod, in partnership with AIB. Check out #TheToughest for more. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
20 past 8, OTB AM, and it's myself and Johnny with you until 10. Delighted to say we're going to continue our football conversation now. Nedum Onuoha, former Manchester City player, joins us on the line. Morning, Nedum.
Good morning, how are you?
I was planning to kick off the chat about Manchester City and interesting times there, of course, but I think on the basis of last night, there's only one place to go. What is your overall assessment of where Manchester United are at right now?
I think it's tough to say. I think a game like yesterday against Seville was particularly bad, but they've not had too many of those. They've not had too many of those games in the grand scheme of things this season. It feels like they are progressing forward, but then when you see that they've got a few players injured and alike, then you know it's not going to be the best version of United. But you just don't expect them to crumble the way that they did, especially with mistakes coming from their key players. But this is essentially European football, and Seville, for as much as they've done nothing in La Liga this year, you hear their record in their home stadium, and like from this point, they're expected to almost go and win the whole competition. But I don't know, it's tough. Obviously, some people have been scapegoated, like I heard earlier on the show, and that doesn't necessarily seem right. But they've got a game in 2 days' time against the side in Brighton who are very good. But that could be a huge win for United because they get themselves into another final. So it's not all doom and gloom. I think Ten Hag was very much like that when they played against Liverpool and lost so badly. It's just all about the next game, learning from the little mistakes that they've made and understanding that they can't make those again. But it was tough because I thought they were going to win, especially given the fact they were so dominant in that first leg. But again, this is two-legged European competition. The side that plays at home in any quarter or semi always has a great chance.
Nedum, you're kind of touching on a point there, which I definitely felt this with Ten Hag early in the season when was it the Brentford game where they lost their first two games. They were appallingly bad and whatever, and then they went on a run. The carousel of football games now and then must be so difficult to deal with, where you play in the Premier League, then you go to Seville in a massive pressure game, and then, as you say, 2 days from now they're in. It's just never ending. So it's statistically almost impossible not to have off days like they're having now with what isn't a massive squad.
Yeah, that is true. And the squad isn't massive, but you still would have expected a slightly better performance yesterday. But I think what's key, at this time of the year, because they're looking at Man City and other sides who playing every 3 days, I think when you have a bad day, you can really focus quickly. If this was a Saturday to Saturday, there's a lot of time to stew about it, time for the media to continually ask about it. But when he does his next press conference, they might talk about Seville, but the bigger topic is still the next game. And I think he's very good at sort of instilling that in his players and giving them a chance to go and redeem themselves and understand that the next task is going to be different. I think you could hear that basically from the interviews with Eriksen and the like after the game. You know, they acknowledge what came before, but it's about moving on essentially. And the bad games do happen. And I think for United and some of these other sides, I think what's key is that you look at the performances. Some of the results might be bad, good or whatever, but you can see which way they're trending. And I think to a certain extent yesterday, they seem to be trending in the wrong direction. But you now see the importance of someone like Bruno Fernandes, who's a very divisive player. Because I think if he plays yesterday, the game probably goes a different way. So it's great to have him back, I imagine, going into the game against Brighton, where they'll need that little bit of extra quality and leadership and sort of just to manage those bigger moments. So I genuinely think United will be fine. I don't think that game yesterday is indicative of how they're going to be between now and the end of the season. But again, we'll have to see, won't we?
Your former teammate was on Irish TV last night in Virgin Media, Richard Dunn, and he was talking about, he was very critical of the performance and of the team and of the direction they're going. He spoke, the thing that jumped out for me specifically, about the attitude of players, and he name-checked in that regard De Gea, Shaw, Martial, Sancho, and he said they have more players at the minute, Manchester United, who look uninterested than those who do, which feels to be a step above almost what you're saying in terms of how deep-rooted the issues are.
Yeah, do you know what? You could say that, but then with some of those players, they've done really well for them so far to this point. I think there was a point when United were nowhere near anything in particular. Then they went on the run that they went on. Obviously, it was on the back of Rashford scoring as many goals as he did. But Luke Shaw, again, was having a fantastic time in terms of how he was playing. And I don't know, maybe to a certain extent, some of them are tired. Maybe they just couldn't handle that moment because I from what I gather, going to play in Seville in a knockout competition, especially the Europa League, is a tough place to be. But I think Dunny, he's perfectly entitled to his opinion, and he can go very strong because I'm sure he's picturing what it'd be like to be playing with those people in that hostile environment. But I think Ten Hag knows those players, and if he continues to pick them, then he must have some level of trust in them because, as we saw with somebody who was there at the start of the season, if he doesn't think you're doing the right job, and that is Cristiano Ronaldo, before you know it, you'll sit on the bench, and after that, you leave the football club. So I think he does trust those guys, he trusts those leaders, and knows that moments like yesterday, they're an exception as opposed to something which he believes will happen on a week-to-week basis.
That piece that we're sort of talking about in terms of the players who are like invested in the outcome or interested or trying, I suppose, you definitely couldn't label that one to Harry Maguire. I don't think anybody, the most critical people of Harry Maguire, would never say that he's not interested or he's not trying. But equally, how does this play out for him now over the next couple of months and beyond?
I think it's tough because it feels like a lot of people hate him, and it's not just one or two, probably more so than, say, a United player that I can picture in my lifetime, and maybe that's just recency bias. So as a consequence, when they see his name on a team sheet, they're not comfortable. If he does something good, they say nothing, but the moment he does something bad, they speak very loudly. So as a consequence, it feels like he's making a lot of mistakes within the game. And that one yesterday, obviously, he's involved in that first goal, but it's not as if he had a terrible game throughout the rest of it, but still he's the face that will be on the back pages, as you've mentioned. So I think it's a tough spot for him to be in, where he knows everybody's going to be looking at him and expecting him to do bad. And if he does nothing, then nothing gets said. But the fact is, I believe they probably want him out, as in United fans and other people looking at Man United. And they know that, like, even though he's the captain, he doesn't feel like the captain. He feels like the type of person which people expect Ten Hag to get rid of. They want to see a Varane and a Martinez playing in there. Maybe they want to bring in someone else as backup to that. And it feels like his time's coming to an end. And it's a shame the way that it is doing, because overall, he has done well for them. But I think when people don't like you, all of a sudden, there's a real sort of sense of focus on any mistakes that he makes. And when they lead to goals, which is the nature of defending and goalkeeping, people can be extra critical. And it's a shame because I don't think he's going to help him get better, but then in the same breath, right now, they definitely need him.
He's still probably got another 4 or 5 years potentially at the top level if he wants it. He's still a relatively young player. People often talking at him about that, his capacity to up his game from an England perspective. What, in terms of the future for him now, you'd have to assume that he's probably going to leave Manchester United. That would look like the best thing for everybody at this stage. What's your view on the final chapter, albeit sort of 4 or 5, maybe in 6 years at that level for Harry Maguire? What can he do? What can he achieve?
I think that's a good question because we don't know. Say if he was to leave this summer, he doesn't just leave and go wherever he wants. He goes where he's wanted. And you don't necessarily know the needs of some of those teams. He will probably believe he can still be in the top 4, top 6 and so on. But there's a big focus amongst that group of getting younger players in as well. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but I think wherever he goes, he's going to be someone who's going to be seen as one of the leaders, really solid Premier League centre-back. And it's almost the rebuilding process, but the shame for him is that if he does get better over the next couple of years, he's very unlikely to get moved back to a team that's sort of trying to be as progressive as Man United are. So I think he just needs to go and find somewhere where he can feel comfortable, be supported, by the team, by the club, by the fans and so on. But unfortunately, I think he's got such a stain on his name that wherever he's going to be linked, there'll be a group of fans from that team who probably won't be as excited as say maybe they could be by bringing in a full England international. And it's a shame, but this is the way football goes. So I think he's got to find the right environment, as I say, with the people around him who really trust him and they defend him as well. Because when it comes down to this situation at United, because some of the mistakes are so clear, no one can really defend him. So it means that other people just attack and pile on, and he's just got to sit there. And I've heard, maybe you read some of the tweets and stuff that gets put out towards him. And I bet, playing for a club like Man United, that's not just 1 or 2 people tweeting you. That goes by the thousands. So, I hope he gets a chance to go and play somewhere, to settle down, to not overthink things and just get back to being the player that he was, which made Man United want to buy him for all that money all those years ago. It's hard to imagine the impact that it must be having on him and his family. Did you ever go through a period like that, Nedum, of that lack of confidence where you're just, no matter what you're doing week in, week out, you're just feeling as if you're in that bit of a rut? Yeah, I think everyone goes through it. And ultimately, I think it's different now because the clubs that I was playing for, not Man City as such, because this was before the takeover happened, but say when I was at QPR, you don't have as many eyes on you. Whereas I think for Harry, wherever he goes, he knows that the eyes will be upon him, whether he's playing for England or playing a game for United, whether it's playing away at Seville or, playing in a training ground match. Everyone will be talking about everything that he's doing. And that level of scrutiny is something that sort of makes it worse for some people who are at the very, very top. So, you do feel for that and you try and play your way through it. But the downside, I think, for Harry, which I think he potentially gets wrong from my opinion, is that he still wants to try and commit to do the same things, which showed how good a player is. And there was a spell where he would get on the ball and he would drive forward and he would make the right passes. But because people read those movements a bit more now, when you do them, before you know it, you're being punished because people almost expect it, like as was the case yesterday with the 3-man press that led to that first goal. Because he wants to show character and courage to get on the ball and play it and be the leader for the team instead of just booming it long, in a more sort of like conservative manner. But when things aren't going well for you, all of a sudden that can cost the side. And then you're left, as you see, with his face after the goal went in, thinking, well, flipping out, what now?
Yeah. We're going over all ground here, but what did you make of the goal, actually?
Yeah. So it's always dealer's choice, yeah. So De Gea has the ball at his feet. He's got the best view of the whole field. You can see Harry Maguire's there, and Harry's asking for the ball. But De Gea can also see that the 3 players who are around him. And I think if De Gea is going to give him the ball, I think he probably needs to ask for it back in that moment because he can see how he's being pressed. And as a defender, you're very good at receiving the ball, but not very good at receiving the ball with people behind you because ultimately, you're usually the first line in terms of how an attack starts. So most defenders will be uncomfortable in that spot. And it's fair enough that he's asked to try and receive it and show that personality. I'm sure he's done it 1,000 times over in training, but you're playing away from home. And I'd say it wasn't just one person pressing, it was like 2 or 3 Seville players that were right there. So I think De Gea has to manage that moment better. You have to pick the right pass. And the right pass might not necessarily have been to, go long, but ask for it back from Maguire. But then instead, he plays it to him. And then that happens. And before you know it, the game's in a place where that's the uphill nature of that task just becomes that little bit steeper because now you got 40, 50,000 fans screaming and they energizing that Seville side. So I would like to have seen De Gea manage that situation better. Not to say Harry Maguire can't take it there, but I think the two of them could have combined better to sort of put the ball at less of a risk.
That's the best explanation so far, I think, and I haven't even seen the incident.
I'm going to ask you this because we've had a long debate at the start of the show with our producer about whether the pass back to the goalkeeper was on or not.
I think it would have been on if De Gea did a play and move. That's the thing. At the end of the day, if you're going to give someone the ball, you have to give them the option afterwards. It's the same reason why when a centre-back gets the ball and plays it to the goalie, they don't just run straight back to them. They tend to sprint to the sideline to give another angle so you can break the press as such. So without having a chance to look back at it again, I think if you're going to give somebody the ball on the edge of your box as the goalkeeper, you have to give them an option. Otherwise, it's not the right pass to make. And you can say it was blocked off, but it doesn't need. If it's blocked off after you played it to him, then how did you get it to him in the first place? So I'm a bit cynical from that standpoint.
I'm like a dog with a bone with this one, right? But he passed him the ball, and then the Sevilla, so the 3 that came to close them off in that press, one of them had gone between De Gea and Maguire, so the pass back had essentially the only route out was to do an about turn and point back up the pitch.
So which one? So let's think of the 3 then. So there was the one who intercepted it on his left. Yeah. There was the guy who scored on the right, and there was somebody in front of that as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So after De Gea plays it to him, De Gea, do you not think he could have moved maybe 5 yards to the right hand side?
Exactly. That's as Johnny said. That was the best explanation I heard of it. The pass and then make a move, which he didn't do.
That's the thing you have to do. But then, even like just to really nitpick, and it's obviously easy to do when I'm sitting in my house eating a takeaway, watching European football. But even the ball from De Gea to him, it could have been a cleaner ball. It could have been because it bobbled into him a couple of times. It's little details.
Yeah.
And the frustrating thing for me is that both players are very capable of dealing with that situation in a better way and probably have done 1,000 times over. So to do it in this moment, they weren't let down essentially by the younger players. They were let down by some of the most experienced players in a moment which you'd expect them to be able to manage, given the fact that it was only 2 years ago they were in the final as well. So they know how to do it away from home there, but still came up short this time.
I'm sure this is all grist to the mill for Manchester City fans as well, of course.
I wonder what the takeaway was, actually.
What was the takeaway? That's a good question.
The takeaway, it was actually something simple yesterday, just a Nando's. Nice. Keep
Cheeky
it calm,
Nando's.
Nothing too heavy. Cheeky Nando's on a Thursday night watching United. Happy days.
Hard to beat. The City run of games is amazing now, and I'm sure that every game that comes up at the minute, the way they're playing, the amount of goals they're scoring is a mouth-watering prospect. But the prospect of this Madrid doubleheader next month is one for everybody to be excited about, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And don't get me wrong, there'll be a lot of people who will be heavily rooting for Real Madrid because they're anti-City, but then lots of people who root for Real Madrid because they are the kings of European football. And it's the one team who you don't really want to have to come across, whether it's in the group stages, knockouts, or the final. Yet still City have drawn them again, only 12 months on from the last time they had it. And there's a level of heartbreak among City fans because, for a whole game at home, and I think it was 88, 89 minutes in the Bernabeu, they were going through. They were in the best position. But then the Kings of Europe did exactly what they do. I remember in that game at the Bernabeu last year in the second leg, there was a banner that was up before the game, which literally said, another magical night for the Kings of Europe. Imagine how much confidence you need to have in your team to put that up before a game. But they do it because it's like 13 times they'd won it at that point. I think it's 14 now. But I think what's different this year is the sort of added nuance of Man City being at home in the second leg. I think we've seen over the last couple of days that, barring, say, Chelsea, I think it was, a lot of the teams, to be fair, Napoli as well, but the teams that have that second leg at home have a really good chance. As long as they don't blow that first leg, they've got a good chance. And given the way that Real Madrid obviously are very, very good in Europe, they do have their flaws. City obviously have flaws as well. And if it comes down to something which is essentially going to be like a shootout, a high-scoring game, Man City are capable of that. Gone are the days where you're worried if they're going to score a goal in a game. And it's not to say it's like the most obvious thing and a guarantee ever, but they create so many chances. And with someone who scored 48 goals so far this season, if as long as he stays fit, you get the feeling he's going to have an opportunity, and he tends to take quite a few of them. So I like it. I think it's a great Champions League tie. I think the same on the other side with the sort of Milan derby as well. And it's 62 exciting semi-finals. And I would argue the second leg, City versus Real Madrid, is the biggest game that's ever been played at that stadium. And I think a lot of people are going to be desperate to be there to see it because it could be such a huge moment. Because how much confidence do you gain when you beat Real Madrid, the kings of Europe? If you can do that, then you can arrive in a final and believe that you can go all the way. The same way some people like to play the best all the way through. Listen, I prefer not to. But if you can be the team that knocks out the people they expect to win it in front of your home fans, the feeling around that sort of array, that stadium and that football club, it'll be massive. And I think that'll help see them through to the end of the season, whichever objectives they have before it's all done.
They need to do it as well, don't they? Because as you mentioned, like the Real team, it's not a vintage Real team. Like, they're reliant on a set of very good but aging attacking players in some instances. You can get at them defensively, and as you say, the fact that City are probably quite a bit better at home for some reason, and with that crowd, as you mentioned, they really should just get the job done here. There are no excuses in my view.
Yeah, it's a strong way to say it, yeah. And the thing is, I buy into it, except it's Real Madrid. And that's the annoying thing, because as we look back at last year...
And Ancelotti.
Real Madrid scraped through against Paris Saint-Germain. They scraped through against Chelsea. They kind of scraped through against City. And then in the final, their goalkeeper's the man of the match. Like, we could have written them off at every one of those points, because you watch the games and you know that in the flow of it, they were struggling. Yet still, they found a way to win it. And that's sort of part of their DNA as such. Even like when they played Liverpool at Anfield, they were 2-0 down. And I thought, I got sucked in. I was at the stadium. I thought, it's going to be a massacre to Liverpool. And then somehow it's like 5-2 without them really having to really overexert themselves to a certain extent.
2-0 down, 1-5-2. Where have we heard that before? There we go.
Oh, gosh, yeah. But within that, there's just something about them. And it's not to make excuses for City, because this is me making excuses for everyone when they play against them. They have this sort of allure about them in this competition. And I think within their club, the Champions League is more important than the domestic league. That's how they measure themselves, which shows how they are the kings of it all. So I think City will get it done, but it's going to be tough when you're playing against someone who's currently the Ballon d'Or and two wingers in, say, Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr., who are set up to hit you on the break. And when the quality is coming from the likes of Valverde, Modric and so on, they might give up some level of control within the game, but they know they've always got a threat. But the good thing is it works both ways, as was the case when Bayern played City in a couple of days ago. Bayern, if they ever overcommitted, before you know it, there's a long ball to Haaland, a head down, De Bruyne plays someone in, bang, there's a goal being scored. I think this tie has so many goals in it, and that's why I'm really excited to watch it.
This thing about the Bernabeu game, like, Real can't overcommit here, because like they're just not good enough to deal with Haaland if they leave space, in my view.
Yeah.
It'll
be. Yeah. I want to ask you one. I want to ask you one about Arsenal, and we're running out of time, Nedum. I want to ask you one about Arsenal Wednesday night and your view of how all that will play out. There's a lot of focus obviously on that game and potentially a title decider. Equally, when you see some of the results that Arsenal have had recently, they could end up winning that game and still lose the title.
Yeah, things certainly have changed, and this game, it has so much gravity to it, but more so in terms of seeing who's going to be at the top versus who's going to be chasing. But the fact is, the race is still on. I think it was getting to a point when the gap was 5, the gap was 8, that that could be the final nail in the coffin for the title race as such. But instead, it's added that level of nuance because Arsenal have ended up dropping those points, and they're dropping points at Anfield. You can kind of accept that, but it's the ones away at West Ham, given how much in control of the game they were. But I think, again, it's a fantastic game of football. I think Arsenal will probably smash Southampton today. I think it is. And then heading into that game, who knows? I think it's going to be a fantastic tie. And, unfortunately for them, they're going to one of the toughest grounds to get points at this whole season. So, yeah, it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, so much to be excited about. Dennis Ryan says, Nedum's a top-class contributor. OTB, some outfit for sourcing. Great guess. Well done, and keep the comments. So a good note to leave it on. Thanks a million.
Must be a Nando's fan, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Nedum Onuoha on the line. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. I haven't seen the goal, but I think that's a brilliant footballer's appraisal of. It's a lot more than Maguire receiving the ball. It's like the body language of the goalkeeper in De Gea. And if there's a trap, you need to offer him an out straight away. Colm was kind of, I don't know, you obviously
gesticulating that he was right. Was proving his point.
Yeah, but I was like,
nonsense.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Colm is probably a minute away from walking back in to just get.
I would love him to come back in to
that's not going to happen.
Dissect. But the point that I hadn't considered before: give the pass, crisp pass, which he was saying it wasn't, and then make a movement, which is absolutely right. Gave the pass and he stood still, at which point the Seville player had come in between him and Maguire, and there was no pass back.
So the pass itself wasn't played at the right pace, like, essentially. That then you're creating, when you have a high press, that's a massive problem, because that draws you back, and you all of a sudden, you've lost an option straight away because you're committing to the ball. Again, I haven't seen the goal. But I think Colm was wrong, whatever he said.
You might say that, Johnny. You might say that. It is 20 to 8. There's loads of comments coming into us about a whole manner of different things, and we will get to those for you. We have a Friday Firepit still to come. We've Anna Caplice still to come to look ahead to the Ireland-England game this weekend, and plenty more as well besides. So do keep those comments coming into us. Before all of that, delighted to say we're joined on the line by the Examiner's GA writer, Maurice Brosnan. Good morning to you, Maurice.
Morning, lads.
How are you keeping? Can you hear us?
I have you now, yeah. I have you.
Man. You're a United fan, somebody told me, is that right?
Adrian, I am just head in the clouds with GA coverage this weekend. I haven't had time to watch the game last night. Well,
I tell you what, we've a spare 20 minutes here if you want to pick through. Tell us, there's obviously so much to look forward to around the country the weekend. What's the game that you're most looking forward to?
I'd say, from this weekend, Cavan Armagh, I think, could be a cracker. I really think that could be a blockbuster game. Going back to 2019, they went to a replay in 2019, 2 brilliant games. There's probably, in this brave new world we're entering, there's probably more on the line in that game than some other games. So if you go back to last weekend, for example, right, you could have made the case that Tyrone didn't seem too disheartened by losing to Monaghan. For Man, even though they were technically in with a chance of making a Sam Maguire, they're on the dog side of the draw. That it was a really tough outcome for them to get there. Whereas materially, Cavan have a really good chance of making a Sam Maguire. They need to make an Ulster final to make that happen. Armagh's record in Ulster is awful. Like, for 15 years now, I think they've won 7 games in Ulster and they've lost 14, drawn 2. That's including their win this year, obviously. They've never made an Ulster final. Every other team in Ulster has made an Ulster final in the last 15 years. So I think there's a huge amount on the line there, which the new buzzword in the last couple of weeks has been jeopardy. There feels like there's a good bit of jeopardy around that game.
Cavan remind me of my own county in an awful lot of ways, in that you never know. Even watching, I've been paying a fair bit of attention to Division 3, and you just never know from one week to the next. At one point it looked like they were going to run away with it, and then they got snaffled a little bit towards the end. So you have that, obviously, a very good side on their day, of course, and you had Malachy O'Rourke saying during the week that he expects them to give Armagh a scare, but ultimately Armagh to get over the line. Is that the way you see it?
Potentially, yeah. The one thing about Cavan compared to, I think sometimes we find it hard to adjudicate on how athletically developed are certain teams. But then when you look at Cavan and the way they speak about Andre Quinn, they've got a full-time strength and conditioning coach there, a guy with a rugby background. And there is definitely, you see elements of that. You see, players who were wiped by Down in an under-21 game a couple of years ago come back and play Down again in a Division 3 game this year. And the athletic development, they were dwarfing guys. Like, there's something that's happened in the last couple of years that there's been a huge acceleration there. And I think that's critical in a game like this. Like, can you match up with Kieran Mackin and Jelly Oak Burns and Ben Creeley and all these incredible athletes that Armagh have around the middle third. So Cavan are a tricky matchup for Armagh. In saying that, I think Armagh probably have better players, but that hasn't got it done for them over the last couple of years. So I do think this is a crucial game for Armagh. I wouldn't buy into the idea at all that they might have an eye on trying to like a ball stretch. Ulster now, it has to be all about Ulster for Armagh. And based on that, I'd slightly shade it towards them. But I wouldn't be one bit surprised if this is a 1 point game or even a draw.
Do you think it's all about Ulster for them, or is it like get back to Croke Park and go one better from last year? Like, what's Geezer's mentality here?
Yeah, Johnny, but to what end though? Like, if you take your eye off this, the psychological damage of that, I think, is criminal. Like, I really think it would, and particularly you have to take this in the context of coming off the back of what was a pretty poor league. Now, anytime you've spoken to Armagh coaches, they're fairly adamant that they didn't change their style, that it was down to execution, and if a couple of things had clicked. I have to say I don't see evidence of that. Watching with my eye, they were dropping off kickouts completely against Kerry up in Tralee this year. They didn't do that when they played Kerry last year. They were playing with maybe one up top a lot of the times. They weren't doing that last year. Rian O'Neill was out around the middle. He spent a lot more time up top last year. So from what I could see, that's not true. But it started to click towards the end of the league. I thought the best signs of their performance was actually the final game against Tyrone. They looked pretty good that day. Take it what you want against Antrim. I don't know how much you can read into that game, but they look pretty good there. I think psychologically a loss in Cavan and the wagon start to circle and all that sort of thing. I do genuinely believe it's a huge game for them.
Last one on that, the biggest frustration probably, and you're touching on it there from an Armagh point of view, is that sort of failure to take the shackles off, or whatever we want to word it, lack of attack in football, the inability to get ahead of the defensive wave almost, which I think against Antrim they seem to go for it a little bit more. I don't know if that's with no disrespect to them, but because they're playing Antrim, do you expect a little bit of a revert to type this weekend, or what will the Armagh approach be?
Oh, geez, you'd hope so. Yeah, you'd hope so. Just because I would make for... This game could be as entertaining as Tyrone Monaghan last week. I know that's a big shout, but just go back to how good that 2019 game was when Darren McVitie got man of the match. It was a genuine thriller. I have to say, maybe it's hard to read into the Antrim game, I know that. But even if you go back to their final league game, when they were playing to try and stay up that day, they did kick the ball more. So there's elements of that. You go back to last weekend, or 2 weekends ago against Antrim, and you had Adrian Forker getting sidelines and lobbing, just floating. It was kind of an agricultural ball into the square, which broke kindly. Ned Lane did a goal chance. Kieran Mackin did it as well, just floating one off the outside of his right foot. So based off that, you would like to see kind of front foot football, and fingers crossed we get the game to match it.
Forget about Ulster, and we might forget about Leinster as well. What did you make of look at the Galway?
Hang on. Let's Jim McGuinness derby. We need to touch on before we do that on Sunday. What's going to happen?
A very similar game. I think for all the two teams were on kind of very different trajectories. Like for all down and out last year, there was disharmony around management. There was all this talk about. It was this time last year, I don't know if you remember, lads, with all this talk about the training camp that Donegal that started to come out. And then you flip it a year later and suddenly Donegal have lost their manager, down of a new manager in their upward trajectory. There's a lot of hype around the way their 20s are playing. Even more interesting that they seem to be prioritising the tilted senior. I think from all that, there's two teams that are totally different trajectory. And you go back to that idea, it's kind of an immaterial thing, it's hard to put your finger on, but that idea of momentum, of a vibe, of a kind of the goodwill that's been generated, that seems to be all there for Down. It doesn't seem there for Donegal. So I would shade it towards Down. Plus the fact that they have a man in there who seems to know his own county pretty well, which has to be an advantage.
Yeah. Then on to Connacht before we move on to obviously the.
I don't even know if we're going to talk about Leinster.
Looking at league, that might be the third province at the moment. The Galway attack, right? Tierney, Heaney, Cook, Burke, Colm or Walsh, right? But I do want to get you on the goalkeeping situation, because we spoke about like giving players confidence and all that, and this one probably was a tough one, to be fair. He's gone for power over I think Conor Gleeson does get a lot of slack, and Conor Gleeson's probably thinking, well, I've done enough to be picked here. He isn't though.
Yeah. Johnny, you've hit the nail on the head there, and I think you kind of have to be conscious that, particularly if you're in the county here, like there's two sides to this, right? There is I think Conor Gleeson gets totally unfair slack. I don't think this is a black and white decision that one is massively better than the other. There's a lot of subtle stuff that Conor Gleeson does that I don't think he gets enough credit for. It was pointed out to me recently that during the league, he was actually kicking kickouts with his left and right foot.
Wow.
So it's really hard if you can get a press on a guy like that who's kicking dual-footed. It's a really hard thing to do. You know, you can't read a guy's body position, and then it's a lot harder to get a press on. And then you've got situations where Galway are in a league final. There's a team who got to an Ireland final last year, are Connacht champions. There should be a lot of goodwill around the team, and their social media accounts have to turn off comments because of the abuse that a guy's getting over selection. I think it's totally wrong. So you're kind of hesitant to wade into that. But just purely in a football sense, I think there's absolutely a case for Bernie Power to play. Like, he was brilliant against Kerry. I think it's in many ways it's a nice decision to make. I think this reminds some people to get kind of a bad flashback to 2019, where Galway kept flicking between their goalkeepers and frequently would name one and then start a different one, which seemed to add more pressure. And it didn't always work out as well. Whereas I think this is a totally different scenario. I think this is two good goalkeepers. It's a nice choice to have. Gleeson got an absolutely boomer of a long kick out. I think Bernie Power, particularly against Kerry, was really good with those kind of short clipped ones. So it's interesting, yeah. It's very interesting that they went with Power, but I don't think the certain elements of discourse I think are very unfair around this, and you're kind of reluctant to get into that. So purely from a football sense, I can see the logic in going for Power.
I like the fact though that and Maurice would have seen, like I would have seen Conor Gleeson back playing for Galway United, but on the Galway thing, I like the fact that Galway are just very much warned of what to expect from Roscommon here, from the league game in Pearse Stadium and also the game in Castlebar, obviously, where I just think Galway have the forwards to basically just overcome whatever scenario they're in here. Yeah, and I think that league game in I remember I covered that league game in Pearse Stadium, and it was by a distance the worst game I've covered this year. It was just an absolutely dreadful game, and it was the angriest I've ever seen Joyce afterwards about the manner he'd been asked a couple of times during the league. Remember the end of the Mayo game when they failed to control the possession there, and it was a draw, and similar thing, they were up and didn't score for the last 20 minutes, and he kind of ceded there, right, there's something here that we need to fix, like the way we're closing out games. And I think from that point on, Galway's trajectory has been kind of upwards. So I think that was a crucial league game. A couple of things within that game, which I think we'll see again this weekend. I mentioned this last time I was on the show, that Conor Carroll, he's from Galway, he's an O'More Mary man. He played for Joyce under Galway under-20s before he transferred to Roscommon. He's got family in Roscommon. His uncle is the chairperson of Roscommon, but he went 100% long with his kickouts against Galway that day. I think they won't get as much joy out of that because Galway will be well warned about that. Since that Roscommon game, John Maher has been an unbelievable find in midfield for Galway. He'd be a nice foil there. The matchups in this game are still pretty good, I think. Like the two teams fit each other well. But yeah, I think there's no chance of a similar kind of uprising or heist or whatever you want to call it, where Roscommon comes float in under the radar. Galway know exactly what we're going to get this weekend. They won't get as much joy out of it, or they'll have a different tactic in terms of the Roscommon kick-out? No, I from every soundings that I've seen, I don't think they'll change up. I think they trust in what they're doing, that they're fully. That's the one thing about David Burke's team. Like, I think they have huge conviction in what they're trying to do. They know exactly. Totally. They're all on the one page, and even against a big Galway midfield. Shane Curran was talking a good bit about it on the show yesterday. You just say that's it. This is our style, and on we go. I think so. Yeah. No, the only thing in that is if Galway do. When Galway played Kerry, they started off that game. They were flat to the mat. Two teams that seemed to suit each other really nicely. And then about 15 minutes in, Galway decided have it and gave it up to Kerry short and said, "You can try and I think Galway are one of the best teams in the country out of possession. Like they're set defense, the best defence really in the league. Like, and especially the way they're to free up John Daly. A lot of teams should look to that, Johnny, to see how they're managed to create that +1, trying to keep their whatever you want to call their sweeper free, so he can do that job. But So going back to that point, you could just drop off, give it to their full back line and say, you need to work that ball through every single line of us. And then in the face of that, I think it would be 99% of teams would do that. They would tap it to the cornerback. I think it would be very interesting to see would Roscommon still say, let's put it out on the bill. We might not win it, but we're not going to lose either, and just make it a dogfight out there. That'll be one curious thing if Galway decide to opt for that, which they've done a couple of times in the past. And some teams I think that's becoming that tactic is coming back in again. I watched it back, Longford and Offaly recently. Offaly totally conceded their kick out. Like, just said, you can have it short.
So Longford ended up 100% on their own kick-out, but they weren't able to work the ball forward. They scored 2 points after their own kick-out that day. So if you can't work through every single line of defence, you're trying to run that ball every single time, it's a very difficult thing to do. So that's if that happens, Galway would do that, then it would be interesting to see how Roscommon respond. But under the premise that they go mano and big press, I wouldn't expect Roscommon to change.
When you're watching back replays of Longford Offaly, Maurice, you know you're in too deep.
Yeah. I first came across Maurice doing articles for the Go United match programme. He's actually gone up a level of like erudite nature in sports since like. But
I actually mischaracterised him at the start to say he was GA writer, which was totally underplaying his brief. Senior sports writer. You sounded like you were press ganged into agreeing with Johnny earlier on about Galway winning this one.
They're 4-9 favourites. Like Galway are heavy favourites here, regardless.
Well, everybody agrees with you, including Shane Curran yesterday. What do you think, Maurice?
Yeah, I think they're justifiable favourites. To be honest, you go back to the. So I know they lost the league game, but you go back to the kind of final last year, was similar weather you'd hope to see in Pearse Stadium, and Galway carved them open. And the two key players for Galway that day were Colm and Walsh. Was the first time I think it was one of the very few times in their career that they both played well in the same day.
They didn't play at all in the league game. Like Colm came off after 10 minutes, Walsh wasn't playing.
That was the day he did his knee. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 6 minutes in, he collapsed in the square. But even you go back over the last couple of years, Johnny. Like there's a kind of a quirk of it that one of them plays well or the other plays well, but the All-Ireland final is a perfect example again. Like Shane Walsh was, as I let you get, they probably didn't happen for a Colm. The semi-final was the opposite. You could argue, but that day against Roscommon they were both brilliant. Colm, speaking of long kickouts, Colm was out around midfield. That was the way they started doing that Conor Gleeson boomer out where he was kind of punching the ball on. I wouldn't be surprised to see that back this weekend. So, but the fact that the two of them are back in the field, they're both training. It sounds like everything from the soundings Galway have been well worn. You see a lot of teams now doing these training camps. Galway out in Portugal, they're up in Dublin last weekend. The teams are all kind of opting for that. So I think they've been well worn. They're well prepped. I'd be eking that way, but I think this could be tight as well.
Yeah. A whole lot of players that are worth the entry fee alone to go in and see that one. That's the Hyde on Sunday,
as long as Roscommon don't decide to murder the ball in possession for 3.5 minutes without going anywhere. It's over to you, Davey. You're not going to get away with that against Galway. It might work in Castlebar.
It won't be. Unfortunately, it won't be unique if they. You'll see plenty of that around.
But fully after the game, the Tyrone Monaghan game, I think the public won't really allow for that sort of stuff.
I think it's every game you see. It's an absolute curse. It makes you want to disappear for 10 minutes.
You do say, this is off point, but do you bring in a time limit here on how much you can actually have the ball in one movement?
A shot clock.
Yeah, shot clock. You can't have 3 minutes of possession going nowhere. Now the game is evolving, but you want games like last Sunday, not the previous Sunday. Let's be honest, regardless of what the weather is.
I'm going to say that we'll come back to the shot clock at a certain point down the track, Maurice, because I want to ask you about Kerry Tip before we let you away. And the team, obviously the Kerry team named last night, and of the 14 available from the starting 15 that won the All-Ireland last year, 12 start, and the other 2 are just coming back from injury. Obviously a mixed bag in the league, but this is an incredible statement of intent now from Kerry.
Yeah, go. Speaking of training camps, another team who took this break well, went away, seemed to be motivated very nicely. I think, Adrian, that a lot of teams, you apply an unfair bar certain to All-Ireland winners. Immediately they win in Ireland, and the next thing is, okay, now where's their improvement? Where's the level they need to get to? And I don't think, now you could say on paper there's a lot of good squads, and Dublin have recalled a lot of very talented players, but have you seen any evidence from the league so far that a team has it in them to go beyond what Kerry got to last year? So is the bar for Kerry not just to get to the same level of quality they got to last year, and they'll probably win an Ireland again? I think that there's an argument there. I also think they did their best to unearth 1 or 2 players, and just for bad luck or injury or whatever, it didn't work out. They tried to. I think there was a lot of hype around Stephen O'Connor, and they really pushed to get him back in the team. He was playing midfield. He was excellent at times during the league, and then just cruelly did his hamstring again and required surgery, and that's a real setback. Donald O'Sullivan is another guy actually who really struggled with hamstring injuries. I think Fon Fitzgerald had to reteach him his running mechanics, basically reteach him how to run. He was dogged by injuries. This is a guy in 2017, Kerry played Clare in a Munster semi-final, I think. Clare scored 3 points from play that day. Kerry beat them by 24 points. And David Clifford was playing that day, but the talk leaving after that game was about O'Sullivan, who was in beside him. I think he scored 2-8. So he's been a lot of hype around him since then. He finally we see that this year. He's on the bench. I wouldn't be one surprised to see him get more championship minutes. But by and large, yeah, it's the same bulk of what they had last year. And I think what harm, when you've as I say, I don't see a team who's taken a huge step forward that carry, okay, now that's the level they need to reach. So until that happens, I think they're in a pretty good place.
It should have been Dublin with the players that they have from the semi-final last year, but it just hasn't really happened yet. And that's where we're at.
We'll talk about Leinster football when it gets interesting, which is once the Leinster Championship is over. Maurice, senior sports writer for the Irish Examiner. Thanks a million for jumping on. Enjoyed that.
Thanks, Les.
I tell you, the Galway United match programme has been some sort of platform
for
people. That's how I started, of the 16-year-old.
Two of the greats.
If you have a good English, insert eyes emoji here. But match programmes which are under extreme peril as well, might be on the way out.
Really?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It used to be like a quarter of the attendance would buy one, now it's more like a tenth.
How much are they?
Actually, like the Galway United one last season was a £5. That was the last one I was involved in. It's too much.
How much is a ticket?
Tickets like 15, but now some other programs, the cost of print is really,
the program shouldn't be a third of the ticket price.
No, they shouldn't. No, but this is the starting
I know what you're saying.
I saw all programs. I saw programs from the Roscommon Galway games in '98 that I wasn't even at, because I was away that summer in my house in Galway last week. So somebody, possibly me, decided that we're going to hold on to these programs because this could be a big year. That's like 1998, and I still have them. That doesn't matter if it's like something that's on your phone or it's on so to have that hard copies all these years later is amazing. And Owen Cowser did a piece from the week. League of Ireland match programmes are probably on the way out, and that's sad.
David O'Shaughnessy says get Onuoha on again, very good, clear analysis. And Adrian Long, looking forward to the weekend. Munster Sharks, Galway Roscommon, Clare Tip, a great weekend ahead. And Galway always heavy favourites against Roscommon, points out Brian Lavin, so plenty of interest in that for the weekend ahead. Time to turn our attention back to the rugby now. Anna Caplice, good morning to you.
Well, how are things?
How are you keeping?
Good now, good.
Here we are again.
I know. A big come down after the snooker last night, but look, here we are this morning again.
Are you a snooker fan, are you?
Well, we'd have the snooker on here a lot, yeah.
You should have outed yourself on this a lot earlier, particularly when Shane Hannon was in the studio, because you'd be preaching to the choir there. Less so with me, anyway.
I think anyone who's still in snooker, you can judge him or her very favourably in terms of character, because they haven't been taken over by a terrible attention span in the mobile phone era, where you can actually watch a snooker match. And obviously, we have another one.
I very much enjoy it. Used to watch when I was younger. We'd always have it on here. My aunt used to watch it a lot. So, and when you get to know the names and stuff like that. So, but a few big names out of the first rounds of the tournament so far. So,
who wins?
Have to learn some new names.
Who do you think wins?
I have no idea.
The Rocket.
I have no idea. I just recognise the names. I need to learn a bit more. I learn a bit more, and you can ask me.
Exactly. When Shane is in the next time, he'll be back next week. We'll get into
nerding out in the snooker. Love it. So much more calming.
We've delayed the inevitable. We can delay the inevitable no longer here, Anna. Where do you want to jump in?
I don't know. I think it's been a tough week. It's funny because this is the first tournament where they've gone a block of 2 games, a weekend off, and a block of 3 games. So this is the first, change. That usually this would have been a weekend off. So I don't know how that might have affected things in terms of preparation for the team. Is it just kind of prolonging the build-up? Because this has been a rocky build-up, lots of speculation about, record scores and 100 points. And the players are obviously just trying to focus on themselves. It's and when you see the teams come out and everyone's reacting to wow, England aren't taking it easy anyway, and kind of funny comments like that, which number one, you wouldn't expect them to. Number two, I think they have put in a few changes of girls who want to get starts, to give some girls returning from injury and stuff some good game time as well. So I think maybe you could argue that they've kind of taken changed it up for Ireland where they might not have against other teams. But I don't know. I think again the amount of speculation, it's what we do in sport. But when the gap between Ireland and Wales was kind of surprisingly big in terms of performance and then the scoreline, early in the tournament. And then Wales went on to absolutely smash Wales last week. I think it's understandable that it's daunting.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to do the same as I do every week and just support the girls, and they're going to do the same as they do, which is just prepare as best they can, show up as best they can, and do everything in their power to just to keep this, as kind of low key in terms of score line, and then lift their own performance as much as they can.
That's an awful kind of reality to mindset as well. Like, what do you do in the dressing room before that? And because as a player, it's almost like taking on a prison sentence, where it's like, I just have to do this, get it over with.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever, certainly for me and throughout my career, we were always the step behind England, because they had turned that professional corner kind of just as I was coming into the Irish squad, really, and they'd already started to kind of push the gap with they'd gone semi-pro, and then they'd gone pro going into a World Cup, and then they also had very rocky periods leading into their professional, setup. And so this isn't unique to Ireland. Like, everyone's going to have like the things that they learn and stuff. It's just it's really hard for Ireland to learn this now when everyone else is so far ahead. But in terms of like preparing for the game, and I read like they think they can win, or at least I've heard that, I've seen that. Like, you have to actually believe that. And like, reading quotes, someone like Dorothy Wall was just saying, they're 15 people and we're 15 people, and that's how we're approaching this. Like, previous scores, everything else, you just have to believe that. And actually, I remember Joe Schmidt came into us before the World Cup in 2017, and he talked to us about how Ireland would have prepared for playing the All Blacks. And he said, they'd talk about the players kind of personally, and talk about, that they're not like infallible, was the word he used, and that they can also have a very bad day. That's how I always thought about it. I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I play my best. That's my responsibility, obviously. All of the girls in the squad are going to be thinking that way. They're also going to believe that, a team as good as England, like, if you can get in their heads a little bit, that'll affect them more than that will affect them a lot, because they're so used to performing well and clicking really well. So that's how they're going to prepare for this. And if you're more of a realistic, and that this is, you're going into, like you say, going into a loss here, and it could be very big. Are you going into just damage control? Maybe some players prefer to approach it that way. I don't know. I always, didn't matter who, I always believed that it was going to be like the day when everything went right for us and everything went wrong for them. That's how I always approached it, and I think that's how the girls will do it as well. Like,
it is the context of this entire tournament, right? Like, and it feels almost like a tournament we're just trying to get to the end of, to take stock, and there's all the chat about the grand plan, and I think that, like, it's you can buy into the grand plan, right? Because I know, look, we've talked about it again, and we're not going to talk about it again this morning, but there is elements of progress off the pitch, that there is that bit going on, but not much use to the 15 players who were on the pitch potentially down in Cork, and the tries start to roll in. Like, Nicola Friday is not going to be gathering the troops under the post and reminding them about, listen, everything is fine, the grand plan is coming down the track. This is going to potentially be, and I know what you're talking about 100%, Greg McWilliams has talked about it, we believe we can win, and that has to be the chat clearly internally, but equally it's potentially and likely going to be a very tough day out for this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be no illusion to that. Like, it will be very attritional. You'll have, like, when you play against, thinking of Wales and like some of their bigger players, and like Italy, some of their bigger players, England is like a full team of that. A full team of players that you need to be, wary of, and if you're thinking like, God, we have to get low on that player, you have to do that for every single player across the squad. But like, there are some young, if you look at the front row, for example, and, to kind of hone in more on the rugby, like the scrum has been doing really well. So they have to kind of buy into that a little bit this weekend. They've got, like, England are coming, Hannah Botterman, who's a unbelievable player. She's coming back from injury. So she needs more game time. She won't be up to full match fitness. Connie Powell and Maud Muir, they're only, they're freshies into the squad as well. Like, they're very experienced from their club and they've come in really well into the squad, but they are, they're young English players as well. So that will be an area where Ireland will be like, okay, our scrum has been doing really well. Let's not let up. Let's do everything the same as we have been doing. We don't need to change anything. We just need to, even if it's just sticking your feet into the ground and just not letting them budge you, that's what you're going to be thinking of. And when it starts to, if the steamroll starts, how do you, you're right, how do you stop it? Where do you find an area to go like, okay, scoreline 0-0, don't care. What are we looking at now? What are we looking at now? What are we looking at now? That will be the chat. Like, okay, we didn't push wide enough. We're too narrow. We're missing tackles. Is the communication right? Like, they're all the things that they'll be referring to technical elements under the posts. Like, because as soon as you kind of run out of things to say, or you start like getting annoyed at each other and the heads go down, that's when you've lost, really.
Yeah.
Scoreline or not.
Is there anything at all, anything that the Irish players can take and benefit from this campaign if they're going to get hockeyed again, right? Their scoring has been absolutely brutal. This must be a really, really tough mental experience for these players. Is there anything they can take going forward? Say, this is our nadir, remember this moment, bottle it because we can remember this and actually progress, or is it just all terrible?
No, of course they'll learn. And like at the beginning of the tournament, the question was always around like sevens. Are the sevens going to come in or blah, blah, blah. And that conversation always happens around this time of year. And, the management at the start of the tournament were like, no, we're happy with the squad we have. Like, that's very valuable for that team. Now, the selections themselves haven't been as consistent as I would have liked, because the thing with the sevens is you lose consistency in your selection when they come in and out. So they've got the same squad. Obviously, injuries happen, but even despite injuries, they've kind of been shifting the squad a lot. So it would have been nicer to get a little bit more consistency. But look, at least, the squad and the journey they're all on together is the same. That, of course, it will stand to them. As long as, they don't... And I don't think this will happen, but after such a really tough experience, could they all just be like, I'm done, I'm out, and and turn away from rugby? I don't think that's going to happen. But of course they'll learn. Like, next year, they'll be better. They'll be a better group. They'll have learned a lot. Like, and people are asking like, oh, should we bring in the sevens now? Well, what good would that do to this squad in terms of like? We were here last year. Oh, but if there are some players who were taken out of it because they weren't trusted or whatever, then that experience has been taken away from them. So like, I know it's really hard, but at least they're going somewhere together, this squad group. So I think that is what we're going to have to take from it, and that's the reality of where we're at now.
Yeah. You do hope that, like, obviously as they accumulate the experience, because that's always seen as a good thing, and the game hours and all that it's just not a burning experience, like you've pointed to there, that ultimately damages a group of young players. Talk to us a little bit about the line out specifically. I know you mentioned the strength of the scrum, the line out obviously faltering the last day, a big reliance on Nicola Friday there, and there's obviously a change in the back row with Dorothy Wall out injured, and Brittany Hogan comes in and replace. Is there an easy... this is a stupid question. There's not an easy fix. Is there a fix for that specifically this weekend? It's such an important facet to win.
Repetition in camp. Change nothing. Obviously what they have, they obviously have to trust what they have. They're just not nailing it. I don't think it's the fact that their lineouts aren't good enough. I think I always found frustrating when a lineout wasn't going right, but you felt like you were so close to getting it right, a coach might come in and change it all. And I really found that really frustrating. I was like, no, we just need a bit more time to like get everyone on the same page. Okay. So I think that they will have repped so that there's no doubt, because it's hard, because when you've got changes, a whole line out can change from week to week, and also from 1 minute to the next. Like when a change might happen because of an injury or an unforeseen change or something, and a player comes in, specifically a back row, because a back row needs to slot in. Like, she could be a jumper or a lifter. She could go in the middle, go in the back, or go in the front. Like, there's a lot of different options where you could slot in, and you need to know every option in every part, and every combination needs to be known. That's very difficult to achieve, even when you're full-time professionals. That's difficult to get right when, you know, you're on a... I don't know, they've got like a lot of time together, you know, during these weeks, but still repetition would just be my thing that I hope they will have worked on this week, so that, like, bang, when it's called, you're meeting the ball at the top, no one has missed a beat, everyone knows where they're at, and that I'm hoping that's what we'll see tomorrow, and it'll be evident that they've worked on that.
Yeah, we keep talking about green shoots. Hopefully we'll see a few, whatever they may be, this weekend. It's 2:15, Musgrave Park tomorrow. Get yourself down, watch it on the TV, and hopefully we've a little bit of something better to talk about when we're chatting, hopefully next week. Anna, thanks a million.
No worries, talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the snooker. Anna Caplice on the line there.
Who do you like for it, actually? The Rocket?
I am absolutely Johnny come lately. When it gets to the latter stages, I'll tune in and watch a little bit. Just find that I've so much sport to watch. I'm watching it endlessly, Johnny. Finding more room for like, particularly a sport like snooker that just obviously takes so long to watch. It's just impossible. Like,
my attention span is so bad now. Like, I can't watch a horse race without doing something to it. ADHD probably, and also phones. Like, phones are just making it way worse.
Did you not come off Twitter?
Yeah, but it's not even social media. It's just it's just like this constant. It's really like, and I was the last person in my college class, I remember, to get a phone, and so that was in the end of first year. So I was kind of naturally averse to getting it. I just, for whatever reason, I didn't really like the idea, and that was long before the smartphone. Now it does everything bar go to the toilet for you. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's only a matter of time.
And you look at kids now, and you're like, what hope do they have? Like, I don't have kids, but my biggest worry would be, how do I keep him or her off the iPad and the phone as best I can? And I've no chance.
My young fellow was over. He's Switch mad, so he's 6. He's Switch mad.
What's Switch?
Doesn't have a Nintendo Switch. It's like the latest sort of. It's just a console with like same thing, whatever. And he's Switch mad. I was around his buddy's house the other day, and like just an hour on the Switch goes by, click with fingers. But it's all. So a couple of his pals have it. He doesn't have one, but it's all that gets chatted about now. But like the ease at which technology, look at, it's old man shakes his fist at the sky stuff, and there's an element of it that I'm all for, because there's a bit of interaction with the mates going on and all that stuff. It's not all bad, but there's definitely a management of it that
my only dad cast as not being a dad like contribution is like the kids is so familiar with the phone, because the kid has probably been in a photograph 10,000 times, give or take, whatever it is, before he or she can even walk.
Yeah.
So at that stage, he or she is totally familiar with the phone and is naturally inclined to go towards it. And then once he or she can actually use the damn thing.
Oh, I'm telling you, it'll frighten you what's going on in my house.
Bring him to the outdoors as best you can.
Plenty of that. 9:15 here on OTB AM. Here are some of the highlights on the OTB Podcast Network for you today. We'll have League of Ireland Match Day, of course, the Women's Six Nations Show. We'll have Anthony Nash and Eddie Brennan coming your way as well. You can follow OTB across social and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. During the ads, you're going to hear a latest clip from the Women's Six Nations Show. Ali Donnelly, Fiona Hayes talking to Aisling about areas that Ireland can improve in against England, and the Six Nations Show is with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. We're back after the break. It's Kathleen and Cameron in the Friday Firepit.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
He's got O'Shea in behind, and is this the clincher? Oh, you bet it is! It's a goal for Arsenal, and Merson has scored it.
It's the Arsenal legend Paul Merson and UEFA Champions League winners John O'Shea and Wes Brown, and they are coming to Dublin.
Gets across it, Brown!
Myself and Joe are going to be hosting a very special UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat. It's on May 3rd in the Mansion House in Dublin. It is going to be a cracking night. It's an exclusive off-air event. So if you want to be there, get on to offtheball.com/events. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League.
What do you make of that? Is there any improvements that you would like to see being made for the England game?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know where to start, isn't it? I think, and I bow to your coaching knowledge. I mean, I think against England, look, where do you start with working out how you play England? You know you're going to lose the game. You know that you're going to be defending for long periods. You're not going to have the ball. where are England strong? Well, everywhere, but particularly they'll have looked at our lineup and thought we can pick that apart. They have a brilliant driving maul, which they've gone to a bit less this year because they haven't really needed to, but they can. I think with a small back row, you've got to try and slow them down a little bit as much as you can. England come around the corner so quickly. It must be. I've never played at this level, but when you get up off the ground and you've just hit 4 rocks in a row and the ball's about 4 meters away, it goes soul destroying. And I think if you watched England play Wales when they were down to 13, it felt like Wales were down. It felt like England the other way around. It felt like the other team had less players. So I think England just come around the corner so quickly because the speed of their rocks is phenomenal that we've got to try and slow it down as best we can. Getting those players over the balls, back row that you mentioned, Nave Jones as well. And just doing our best to simply get back on our feet and fill that pitch as much as we can. And I know that's very simplistic advice, but this is a team that are going to beat us by quite a lot. The other thing I'd say is they're going to be under the post a lot. I think it'd be really interesting to know how Nicola Friday, as captain, is going to approach that. Is she going to what is she going to say to the team under the post? Because they're going to be there a lot. That must be a really interesting captaincy challenge. Do you go tactical? Do you go motivational? What styles? I just find that fascinating, and I'd love to ask her afterwards when the dust has settled how she approaches that. But it's a tough mindset to go into that match that when you're going to lose heavily.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
What is it called? Friday Firepit? Firepit Fridays?
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating
miserable
comments box this morning. You gotta call it like it is.
It's Friday, like, come on.
The Friday Firepit.
Is there a summer version of the name of this? Because it feels the analogy about pulling up a seat around the fire and cozying our hands around the flames.
You never had a campfire in your life?
Yeah, but around in the summertime it feels like it's we're stretching the analogy.
I was going to say Kathleen, in Ireland you're more likely to sit around a fire outside during the summer.
So moved outside?
Okay. It's a nice day. You sit around a little fire pit outside.
Okay, I could.
End of the day, little
Speak
blanket.
about smartphones and that, Kathleen, and there's still something never-endingly magic about a fire and starting a fire and kindling a fire. And a fire, if you go to this would be my favourite experience of it, would be going to the Blasket Islands, and if you stayed the nights in the Blasket Islands, at the end of the night everyone from all the houses, they'd gather around the fire pit outside, and across from the fire you can see the mainland, the lights of the houses, and you just have these flames, and it's just absolutely, it's the most blissful experience ever.
I see they've a couple of custodians have moved in to the Blaskets. They do this every 6 months. They give new people the chance.
100,000 people apply.
You'd be a great man for that.
This is
I wouldn't get it. 100,000 people apply.
Do they?
If you haven't been to the Blaskets, stay 2 nights. Just do it. You'll never regret it.
What's the accommodation? Are you camping
You're in a little cottage.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have you can't have hot showers. There's no hot water, no electricity.
Jump in the sea,
but you can more or less charge your phone. Yeah, and you swim with the seals, and then it's basically like a nature reserve. You'll see hares that you'll never see in the mainland, rabbits, loads of birds, sheep. Mainly the seals are the most amazing thing, but just the whole sound of the ocean and just the views.
What do you mean you can kind of charge your phone?
There's the caretakers last year were quite they do have a small little bit of energy from a little
the caretakers were ourselves the last time they were in.
Huh?
You were saying the caretakers were a bit
no, but they don't want everyone to be charging. The point is go get away from your phone. But it is excellent 4G. So I was doing Zoom calls from the Blasket Islands.
Okay.
Whether I liked it or not, I was working. But you kind of you want the basic kind of necessities, but at the same time you want to be removed from them.
Yeah,
if you can charge your phone, obviously, because you want to take photos ultimately.
Just in case anyone is just tuning in, welcome to Off the Ball, the sports show.
Sports show.
At the start, he was giving it. What were we on about at the start? Something nothing to do. The monk and all, and Colm was
you were
this is a
talking
sports show.
Doing
great vibes on a Friday.
Series of podcasts.
Yeah, murder.
Yeah, meeting the murderer.
And gangs, apparently.
You having some of that, Cameron? Meeting the murderer?
Meeting the murderer?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be keen on meeting any murderers if that's...
No, Johnny's going to do that on your behalf.
I'm going to do it for you.
Oh, on my... is there a glass screen? Are you doing this via Zoom, or are you going to go meet them and...
TBC.
Leave
I'm going to meet them.
Things
to
that...
the jail,
okay. I'll listen to it. I'll give it a go.
He hasn't made it yet, but we'll see.
I haven't made it yet.
Right.
I only thought of it an hour ago.
Cameron,
will we get into this?
Where we go?
Yeah.
So I suppose the thing I wanted to talk about this week was that Arsenal video that came out. I don't know if you all saw that.
Yeah.
There's a girl outside the dressing room.
Can I just say, Arsenal never gets talked about on this show, and the one time it's brought up consistently by every single person is like, oh, we should talk about this Arsenal video where all the Arsenal players look really, really bad.
Terrible people, yeah.
And like, top of the league still, would never talk about the football. We barely get a question into most guests about them. It's always about United. It's always about Harry Maguire, David De Gea, and then this is the one time we talk about Arsenal. I have my issues with this.
What was the Arsenal thing, Cameron?
You'd rather talk about Arsenal in negative terms a la De Gea and Maguire, is it?
No, I think she's saying the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think
this was going to be a strong defence of Arsenal, but I mean, you're getting your licks in early, which is good. But the Arsenal video came out, and it's the girl who's the mascot for the day has her jersey, and all the players sign the jersey, but just sign and walk on
as they walk into the dressing room.
Yeah, like they're signing a book of condolences and just moving on. Like no talk, no chatter at all. And the players online, Arsenal put it on their social media, and it was roundly criticised. Why are you putting this up? The players don't look particularly personable at all. Subsequently, the father of the mascot went online and said actually she had a brilliant day. She met Martin Odegaard, who's her favourite player. It was really, really excellent. Kudos to Arsenal. But it really fascinated me that they got such stick for, not engaging on, their match day prep. Like when they were trying to get into the zone, you'd feel, and walking to the dressing room, like I would feel that the game day starts as soon as you get off the bus, at the very least. So they're probably in the zone and don't have, probably aren't in the mood to engage with fans as much, and I think we should probably give them that space. I remember I went to Ireland, England when I was a teen, and my best friend's aunt worked for the IRFU. We got to meet the players afterwards, and it was a game that Ireland won, so it was brilliant. And we were standing in the corridor between where they were coming out to the president's suite in the Aviva, and we got our photos, and Joe Schmidt and a few of the others were incredibly nice and gave us a good bit of time, but some of the players just took photos and left. And I remember at the time feeling, why weren't they stopping for a chat or whatever? And then you're kind of like, their families are in that room, they're probably just trying to get the last thing they want to see is adolescent Cameron waiting in the halls for a selfie and a chat. They part of their day is they want to see their families straight after a really big game.
The whole thing just got overblown.
Yeah,
it's like a
I don't
mounted on a
understand
molehill. I think the point that you made was that the dad and the girl, or the dad on behalf of the girl, issued some sort of a statement to say it was grand. Calm down.
My thing with it as well is that I do agree with some of the commentary. Like the player, someone could have smiled at her. I don't think it would have taken all that much out of your day. I actually kind of disagree with what you're saying, Cameron, in that yes, you're in match day mode, but it doesn't take all that much to throw your eyes up and actually look someone in the face or in the eye. But I also think, why was she there in the first place? Why place a 10-year-old girl outside the dressing room when all the players are going in probably in the mode of thinking about the game, thinking about what's happening? Get the jersey signed earlier in the day whenever she's actually with the players and enjoying that
and also
chat with them and stuff. But I also think that as Adrian was saying, it was just massively overblown, and the whole reason we were talking about this earlier was what is the expectation on players, what is the expectation from fans, what are we owed as fans? And I think you kind of have to accept when you're a player that there is something that you owe your fans. These guys are paid tens of thousands of euro every week to kick a ball around for 180 minutes a week. I don't think it's all that much to ask for them to stand and take a photo or sign something.
I disagree. First of all, right, if a tree falls in the forest, does everything have to be on social media, or it didn't happen? Why does this need to be filmed? But secondly, it doesn't really matter, Kathleen. It doesn't matter how much money Harry Maguire's paid. That if he were paid half what he's on, it wouldn't make it any easier for him or harder not to make mistakes. And they are human. And I look at Rachel Blackmore at race meetings, and I looked at Frankie Dettori, and Frankie Dettori is totally different on camera than off it. He poses for the photographs, but part of him obviously hates it because it's hard and it's tiring.
It's incessant is the thing.
It's incessant and it's hard. And it's funny you mentioned that, Cameron, about the Ireland game, this is a little bit of off the point, but I only got this text the other day about this lad he'd be probably 50 odd now. He goes, my second Ireland game was against Cyprus that November. Brother-in-law took me, have the programme full of photographs, all bar Brady and Stapleton, who blanked us, and he still remembers that. And you do remember as a kid. And now, as a kid, I'd be like, that's terrible. I'd say, now I'd be like, I'm having a bad day here. I just can't deal with it.
Reflection on your pal, because like Jesus, like Brady, I thought he was going to say like Robbie Brady and like
Brady and Stapleton.
Time to build a bridge.
And you can imagine Chippy Brady like blanking you, like one of the greatest, and you think, but he might have been having a bad day.
I think the context of this very specific thing is that they had seemed as if they'd probably come off the bus, they were walking into the ground,
in the zone,
they were about to go into the dressing room. Absolutely in the zone.
Yeah.
Like them stopping to do anything.
Why did it need to be on social media? Why did it need to be filmed?
Look at whatever. Obviously Arsenal were trying to demonstrate that they were doing something good. It didn't happen
if it wasn't on social media. It never happened. We wouldn't be talking about it. Why did they need to film it?
But also, like the dad said, she had a great day. She was like, did she walk out in the tunnel like holding Odegaard? It was clear that when Odegaard came over. By the way, look, I equally think they could have cracked a smile or like given her a little nod. Wouldn't have knocked anything off their day. But at the same time, like, let's not have a big craze of like these, like, we don't want a big reaction to this where every club has to be seen to be going OTT.
I think even post game, I would be like, okay, you've won, or the results there. If they'd won a match and then, I mean, the West Ham game didn't really go to plan for them, but
that was the other ridiculous thing as well. People started like blaming the little girl for the fact that Arsenal had drawn the game. They were like, she took them out of like the game zone, and I was like, Jesus Christ, lads.
The pen they used was laced with something.
Just like
it's not a bad point, Johnny.
Good point generally, yeah. But I'm waiting. I mean, this could come later in the day or could be out already. I haven't checked, but I'm waiting for the obligatory De Gea apology for last night. Like De Gea's Instagram is like a mosaic of just apologies for terrible performances, and I don't even think that should be like the norm for players. Like this apology and players deserve a sort of maybe a refund for the money that they've paid. That's not the deal. The deal is you go along to the game and you watch your team. It's not a pay-to-win thing, and I don't think teams should have to apologise because they probably feel pretty terrible about performing badly anyway.
Do you know who does those posts really well? Is Ruesha Littlejohn. So she'll do the classic, bad performance last night, we go again, and then she'll leave like a couple of lines, and then she'll have like some really hilarious comment at the very bottom, kind of like making fun of the whole, so sorry, it was a terrible game. We're trying our best. We love the fans. Thank you for coming out and supporting us. And then she'll just have something completely sarcastic at the end of it. And every time I see those posts come up, I'm like clicking the see more on Instagram to be like, what's she gonna say today?
That's how you do it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of expectation. Like, fans are entitled to an acknowledgement for the players that things were wrong, or we should do better. But apologising,
the thing is, though, like the players aren't actually writing those apologies. It's their social media teams.
Totally,
like the players don't even know it's probably going out half the time.
But De Gea apologising in like post-match pressers or post-match interviews as well, says, "Oh, sorry to you guys." I don't even think that's necessary, to be honest.
I didn't see the Christian Eriksen interview after last night, but apparently Paul Scholes was losing his mind about what appears to have been this particular topic.
But just a lack of...
It wouldn't have been for Paul Scholes coming on to social media and saying, sorry about that, we go again.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have had that in the day.
The League of Ireland players can be quite funny. Like we'd Keith Ward on during the week, and when they beat Bows back in the day, he nicked the corner flag kind of at the end of the game, and at that time, Stephen Bradley was slagged for saying every time they play Bows, it's Bows Cup final. It's their Cup final when they play Shamrock Rovers. So Bows uses this as motivation. But Keith Ward, I remember he goes, sorry for nicking the corner flag. We'll take it out of the Cup final bonus. And then you'd have like Keith Buckley, who was getting the Lewis home after winning the game against Rovers, just like taking a selfie with all the Bows fans on the Lewis. And that's more like it than going on Instagram to your 1 million followers.
The other topic we had today off the back of is the League of Ireland cool from yesterday?
I've just pointed out clearly that it is.
Yeah, incredibly. But who would be the coolest sports person, in your opinion? Who do you find the coolest?
In general?
Yeah.
Do you know who it actually is? Because I'm edging more towards his age almost than players. Carlo Ancelotti.
Carlo Ancelotti.
It's a good shout.
That's a very good shout.
He literally, like, the ball in the first leg went over the line, and he did like 3 kind of little keepy uppies, and then like nudged it back into play in this unbelievable 3-piece suit. Looking, what is he, 60 odd? What is Carlo? He's well in his 60s anyway. He's just the coolest, and he's Italian. What more do you want? And he somehow manages all these millionaires with no issue.
2-word answer for me: Dustin Brown, guy who beat Nadal at Wimbledon in 2013. Just oozes cool.
That was more than 2 words, but
well, I wasn't good at maths.
There was also silence after you said it, in fairness.
Who you having, Adrian?
I don't know, like James Lowe, Denise O'Sullivan.
Denise O'Sullivan's a great shout.
Like
that goal during the week.
Class.
So
cool. We're over time.
Wouldn't be like us.
James Lowe is just cool though, isn't he? He's literally, you know exactly.
It's the hair.
He'd be dead on.
Hair tying.
And Kiwis are just class. And he'd be a great lad to do anything with, really.
Kiwis are class is a perfect note to leave it. Kathleen, thanks a million for coming in. Cameron, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Johnny, I don't know when we'll see you again. Soon, hopefully.
Westmeath the weekend, yes or no? In either code?
It's certainly not in one, and hopefully in the other.
That's the Spurs.
Monday show. Well, they're like, I don't know. Anyway. Jared Nathan are going to bring you the Gillette Labs performance rankings. We'll have Anthony Moyles, we'll have Andy Mitten, Alison Miller, and plenty more as well. Right now, we're going to leave you with some John Giles. Have a fantastic Friday.
It is Thursday's football show. Nathan with you this evening. Delighted to have John Giles in studio. How are you keeping, John?
I'm good, Nathan. Thank you.
We were just talking off air. I was just saying I'm just back from America, and you were saying how obviously you spent quite a bit of time in North America between Vancouver and obviously you spent a year playing in Philadelphia. I just noticed the owners of the Philadelphia Fury included Rick Wakeman, Peter Frampton, Mick Jagger and Paul Simon.
Yes, yeah. We could have done them with them on the pitch, singing a few songs, I think, Nathan, at the time. Yeah, it was new, obviously new.
So this is 1978, North American Soccer League.
Yes, yeah, with Peter Osgood, Alan Ball.
Wow. And how did the move come about?
I think there was obviously somebody in England. They were English owners, so they had to get a team. A couple of Irish lads came. Fran O'Brien and I'm trying to think the other lad's name.
Was Pierce O'Leary there? I'm going off Wikipedia here, who says their penultimate game of the season ended in controversy when Pierce O'Leary, on loan from Shamrock Rovers, attempted to attack the referee because a goal was scored in sudden death overtime.
Yeah, that was in Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah. Pat Bourne.
Right.
Fran O'Brien, Pat Bourne came over from Bowes. And these lads were taking lads over from England. Alan Ball was in that. And I was in Ireland at that time.
So you were late 30s at this stage. Was this
what year was it?
1978.
Yeah, I was going on 38 at that time.
So was this a jolly, a nice little retirement season, or was it serious?
It was a bit of a moneymaker, to be honest. Experience, funny enough.
Yeah.
You know, it was a great experience. I was amazed at it, the things they had, because I read about the things they were doing in America, which was no such thing as a draw. You had a shootout from the halfway line. You had 5 seconds to get your shots in, which was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
You like that?
It was brilliant.
Right.
It was real football. Like usually it's penalties. This was, a bit of skill to do it.
Would you practice for that?
You could practice for it. Oh yeah, very much so. You had 5 seconds to get your shot in from the halfway line. And one of the big things was about it that there was no such thing as a draw. Well, say you drew 5-5, right? The team got, say, 7 points for a win, but the team that scored the other 5 got 5 points.
So there was an incentive.
There was an incentive to keep going all the time, and it finished up in a draw. Then it went to the shootout, right? And depending obviously if it was a 5-5 draw, the team that won in the shootout got an extra couple of points, but the team that had the 5 got 5 points. So it was encouraging all the time to get goals, no matter what the position was in the match. I thought it was really good, and it was very, very skillful, the shootout.
Interesting that you enjoy. I would have thought that those sort of dramatic changes from what you were used to in English football would have been sort of totally alien to you.
Well, before I went,
yeah,
they were. I thought this is typical American. But it wasn't. It was true. There was no draws. It took a bit of skill to win it, but you were also rewarded for scoring, although you were beaten. As you know, in England now, if you're beaten 5-4, you don't get any points. Yeah. And the way it was in America, you got X amount of points for the goal scored plus the win, you know. So it was, I was amazed at it, but I was pleasantly surprised at the way they did it.
And did you take it seriously as a player?
Oh yeah. I played in Philadelphia. I was getting paid to do it, Nathan. You have to do. Yeah, no.
You weren't on holidays.
No, that's not. Wouldn't be right. You couldn't do that. No, I couldn't do that anyway.
To link it back,
experience as well, Nathan. You know, like obviously I never played. I had played in America before with Manchester United. Funny enough, when I was young, we went on a tour of North America. We played in Vancouver. We played in Toronto, I think, but mostly in America. We played about 8 to 10 matches, which was madness, really. An awful lot of travel at that particular time. Played in New York. There was a Scottish team. Can't remember what we played. We played them 3 or 4 times in different places. But that was a great experience, there's no doubt. So I knew a little bit about the American football. We weren't playing shootouts at that particular. That was only in 1960, 61, 60-61. When I went to play there the next time was 70, 78. So there was a good bit of time.
Yeah.
But I was surprised at how good they were for the crowd, for the rewards for losing the match, and very, very well done. Everything very, very well done. It's a great experience.
So to link it all together into modern day football, did Mick Jagger or Paul Simon ever come into the dressing room to hammer the players for a performance? Todd Bowley style?
We never had a Todd Bowley.
Did you have a night out with Mick Jagger?
No, we didn't see him.
Okay.
Funny enough, we saw a couple of the other lads who were keen on the football.
Right.
You know, they used to come into the dressing room when they were there because they were working themselves at that particular time. But we never came across Mick Jagger, no.
So, of the past week of Chelsea, which is the crazier scenario? Todd Bowley going into the dressing room to berate the players after defeat to Brighton, that it was an embarrassment to the club, or Frank Lampard picking N'Golo Kante as a number 10 in the Champions League game?
I think the owner has to come in for it. Todd Bowley, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I have it written down here. Todd Bowley told the players they were embarrassing, right? And I just wrote down this morning, look in the mirror, Mr. Todd Bowley. I mean, what an embarrassment for him. He's bought all those players. Potter, I'd say no say whatsoever in it. He's got Frank Lampard out, who has obviously got no say. Because if Frank Lampard had to say, he wouldn't allow him into the dressing room to do what he did and say what he did. Like, it's disgraceful. This is the fella that's bought all these players. No doubt about that. It's not Potter and Frank Lampard. But it's not my fault. It's the players' fault, you know.
Would it be very unusual for an owner to go into a dressing room and speak to the players like that?
Yes, definitely. You can't have an owner like in my day. It would have been the director. The director. No way would he be allowed into the dressing room. That's totally against the manager's credibility.
But doesn't that show why Frank Lampard got the job again and took the job again? Because he's the type of personality who would let the manager in and let the owner in.
Yeah, I'd say it's a difficult situation. I mean, from Frank Lampard's point of view, he's out in the wilderness, and he's been made an offer till the end of the season to do what he can do. I can understand it. I think it was a bad move on his behalf because he wasn't in charge of the situation. If he was in charge of the situation, this owner wouldn't be allowed into the dressing room. So Frank has done it to say, well, I might just make it. And I think it's an impossible situation. I mean, they've got about 28 to 30 players, right, who are, a lot of money's been spent on them, not by the manager, by the owner, right? Now, when Potter was there, he was the same. And don't forget, he's what he was called was the head coach. So it means you're not the manager. If you're not the manager, you're not in charge of the buying and selling, right? So he's been kicked out, right? Because he's asked to train, I think it's about 28 players, 30 players, Nathan. You can't, when you're having a training session, how do you cater for 30 players? What do you do? with 30 players. The most you do is, say, 15, 16. Now, if he's taking 15, 16 in the club, the other 14 or 15 are put somewhere else. Right? That's totally against team spirit. Because the lads who are put somewhere else, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. And how do you change that? Say you drop two of that for two of the others during the week. Then those two are going to be saying, what's this all? You can't build a team spirit like that. You can't actually learn what these players are capable of doing when you have so many players in the team. And then this fella, idiot, comes into the dressing room to give them, says he's embarrassed by them. He should have been telling the players he was embarrassed by what he's doing at the club.
It's hard to see what benefit he thought it would bring to going in and speaking to the players. Like, they're hardly coming out of a meeting like that with an owner who I'm sure they don't believe has any great understanding.
I
of football.
don't think he in with that situation. I don't think he was going in to inspire them, Nathan. He was in to humiliate them. Right? This is a guy who's bought these players, made a mess of it with the coach that he's gone. He's got Frank Lampard in on a part-time basis. The players are not going to have great respect for Frank Lampard either, because he mightn't be there at the end, probably won't be there at the end of the season. But he's not taking any responsibility. He's blaming the players and saying they're hopeless. Right? He's created this situation. Potter wasn't buying those players. Right? He's bought loads and loads. He spent what it was 60 million or whatever it is on play. He's done that. The managers haven't done that, right? And he's saying that you're an embarrassment. He's the embarrassment.
One of the remarkable things about Chelsea over the last 10 to 15 years is that despite chopping and changing managers on such a regular basis, success has always continued, and generally the changes have worked. Even if it's a short-term success, they've continued to win trophies. When you look at what's happened under this new regime, and even today they've been linked with lots of the top managers across Europe because of the money you'll have available and because of the history of success. Do you think this is a very different era of Chelsea than we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years?
I think, what was the previous one?
Roman Abramovich.
Right. I think he sacked the managers. But the managers he brought in allowed to manage. He wasn't buying the players. There was never any, maybe he was in between, but I don't think he was. I think when he got the managers in, don't forget the Real Madrid manager was there, was very successful. He fell out with them. But I think when they were there, they were allowed to do the job. I don't think he brought the players in. This is a totally different situation to this guy, right? He changed managers all right, but they were successful, you say, in what they do, because I think when they were there, he allowed them to manage and get the players in that they wanted. I don't think Ancelotti would have done anything else. If he wasn't allowed to, he wouldn't have taken the job in the first place. But Abramovich was very quick with the manager. If he fell out with them in any way, he didn't like me, he got rid of them because he owned the club. But I don't think he was buying the players. I think certainly if he was, it would have been without the manager's approval. But this guy, from the day he's come in with Potter, don't forget Potter was the head coach. He wasn't the manager.
Well, even with Tuchel. When Tuchel was there first, got rid of him, brings in Potter.
Yeah. And he won the Champions League, as we know. Tuchel did. But apparently the big row there was that
Bowley wanted Ronaldo.
He wanted Ronaldo. And Tuchel quite rightly said, no, I don't want Ronaldo, because the manager has to be buying in the players he wants. So he got rid of him. He's responsible for the situation that Chelsea are in, and he has the cheek then to go into the dressing room and blame the players on it. Now, where does that put Frank Lampard? When the owner comes in and tells him you're a disgrace and you're all these carry on, and Frank is supposed to be the present manager, trying to get the best out of them. It's a disaster.
As you say, Lampard was in the wilderness, reputation in shreds after what happened at Everton, gets this opportunity. It's been a disaster since his return. They've lost every match. When you watch the performance, firstly against Brighton and then against Real Madrid earlier in the week, and he's trying to do something different. He's not quite playing N'Golo Kante as a number 10, but in probably a far more advanced role than we've seen Kante before. What's he trying to do there?
Well, I think it's desperation, to be honest, because if you look at all the money that this guy spent, they don't have a striker. They don't have a recognised striker, right? And he's bought 25 players. There's nobody scoring goals for them.
No,
you know what I mean. So, like, if you look at the new manager's point of view, Frank Lampard, it's desperation. Who do I put that might get us a goal? Now, if you put what's his name, number 7,
N'Golo Kante,
he was a terrific midfield player, as we know. I mean, he can't score goals from midfield. He's not a goal scorer by any means. He's a terrific player and he's a great lad. But you're putting him in. That's just desperation. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the owner's idea.
Yeah, you'd
See,
have
Frank
to.
is not going to say.
Lampard at that stage would stand up to him and say,
"Look, how did you step into it in the first place?" You know, I mean, most people say, "No, not for me." In other words, before you go into a job like that, you have to say, right, this is what I need to do. This is what I have to do. I have to buy players. I have to use this players and use a player. Without that, I'm not going in. But Frank is obviously, in my opinion, desperate to get back into the game, right? And I think it's a bad move to do what he's done. I mean, if he said to the owner, right, I'll do it till the end of the season, but I want to be in charge of it. I want to be in charge of the team. Now, that obviously hasn't happened, because this clown wouldn't have gone into the dressing room, tell him he was disappointed, he was ashamed of them, haven't been responsible for it. Where's Frank? I haven't heard Frank say a word since then.
Yeah, it's a shambles.
Shambles.
Manchester City last night got the job done. Obviously, the first leg against Bayern Munich was absolutely key. Going to play Real Madrid in the semi-final. A lot of people feel that's probably maybe even the Champions League final, that the winners will come from that tie. When you look at this Real Madrid, or this Manchester City with Erling Haaland in the side, is this the best Manchester City under Pep Guardiola?
Well, he's been successful with all the players, Nathan. He's I mean, he's got Haaland, who's special. I don't think he's ever had a Haaland in the team before, who's the goal scorer, although he missed a penalty, as we know. But it's difficult to know, because he does different things, Pep, as we know. You know, he has players, defenders, right backs playing in midfield. Well, I'll come back to the other thing. Liverpool are actually doing that.
Yeah.
With Trent Alexander. Now, I think that's the worst thing that Pep does, is play the full-backs in the middle of the field.
Why?
It's because the first thing you have to do as a team is defend. You know?
Yeah.
Yes, that's your thing, because every team's going to be on the defensive at some stage.
Is it not, in a strange way, a defensive move, that it means one of your defenders is a very strong defensive player and can slot in at the back when you don't have the ball?
You can't do that, though, Nate. You can't just slot in at the right time. You know what I mean? You have to be there for full-backs on the cover to do various things, in my opinion.
Is there a difference between what Guardiola's doing with Stones and what Klopp is doing with Alexander-Arnold?
No.
In that, is Stones a much better defender than Alexander-Arnold, and actually
no, but you're not
Alexander-Arnold
defending if you're in that position, right? When you're playing in the position that Alexander's doing, and the midfield players, the players are playing for City are doing, the priority is to be in midfield. You know, they hardly ever defend. You can't get into a defensive position, Nathan. If the ball's down the left-hand side, and it's Alexander, for example, he's going to see where he can get the ball, right? Now, if you lose the ball, nobody can get back quickly to go into right back position. It's just impossible to do it, in my opinion.
So, with that then, with Manchester City, obviously the Champions League is the holy grail for them.
Yes.
To go and win it. Is this the best position they've been in to go and win it because of Haaland?
Probably, but they're playing Real Madrid. You know, Real Madrid are a real team, Nathan. Real team. You can see that coming. They won it last year. They beat City. You don't see their fullbacks doing what they do. You know, now, I'm not saying that's right all the time, but they've been winning trophies right, left and centre. The team's getting a bit older, but they're still there. I just think, in principle, having a fullback doing what Alexander does for Liverpool is wrong. I think the fullback's doing for Manchester City. Manchester City will still give up chances, Nathan. I think that's not there. I think with football, in my opinion, football, when you haven't got the ball, you have to defend properly. And when you have it, then you free everybody to do it. But I think Liverpool, obviously, the other night they were brilliant against. We'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about Manchester City. Certainly with Haaland, it's just a machine. You know, we know he missed a penalty, but he took the way he took his goal, and the goals he took against in the Premier League match. Yeah. One of the goals, the only, which was brilliant. You know, the way he got through. He's a joint of a lad who has the balance of a little fella, which is most unusual. Makes him seem what was good, and a good lad. He's in there now. He's top notch, but it'll be a really, really fantastic draw in the semi-final.
By top notch, do you look at Haaland and think we're watching one of the all-time greats, potentially?
I think so. And funny enough, Nathan, it's not that long ago where people were saying, you know, he doesn't suit the team, or you know, I know there was some.
That's about 2 months ago.
Yeah, we're saying that. You know, they're not scoring as many goals as they would do with it shared out. There was somebody well known on
He's
RTE.
just scoring all the goals that the midfielders would have scored in previous seasons.
You know, can't do that. I mean, he's what's he scored now? 40? Yeah. 40 odd goals. I mean, you can't say anybody that does that is lucky, or it's just fantastic. He very seldom misses a goal. He gets a chance. He's out of the game a lot, like a lot of strikers do, and he depends obviously on the people around him. You know, and he's got good players around him, as we know.
Yeah,
but he does it. The hardest thing in football is scoring goals. He makes it look easy because he's got such talent, and he scored whatever it is. Around 50 goals in this season.
Yeah, he's heading for Dixie Dean levels.
Yeah. Like, you'd never thought in the present day football
we'd see anything like that.
We could see this. No, I think we should all admire him and look at him and see how he does it and makes it look easy. Even the other night, the goal he scored, you know, he's half the first touch, it's in the back of the net. You know, he's just a top class player. That will, if he barred an injury, he'll continue to score. I think he's a good team lad, a good type of individual. He's not greedy, he's not moaning at anybody, he just gets on with it and keeps scoring the goals. And if you have somebody like that, then you're always in with a shout.
Just the one question on Trent Alexander-Arnold then. So he is being, say, named still as a right back, but is playing most of the time in midfield.
Yeah, he always has, by the way.
Not quite to the extent
not
in the
to
last
the extent that he's
but
in there.
If Liverpool say were to play Joe Gomez at right back, is Trent Alexander-Arnold good enough to play as a midfielder for Liverpool?
No.
Why?
Because he's supposed to be the right back.
But if he's not the right back, if you took that away from him and you said we're going to play a fourth back and you're going to play him as part of a midfielder,
well then he's in the middle of the field.
Could he become that sort of player? Because that means maybe
no. But if you see when he's going from right back into the middle of the field, he's playing as an extra midfielder to the opposition, right? Now, if they have a fullback and he goes in as a midfielder, now he's against midfielders, right? He's not an extra. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's now
not as much space.
He doesn't get the space then. Now, one of the main things when you're playing midfield is to get the space to do what needs to be done. It takes a lot of great players to be able to do that. So if you're just an ordinary, if he's sending the right back and he's in his midfield, he's going to be marked. But if you go as a midfield, it's like the centre half going into midfield. There's nobody to mark him. But you're missing out in the centre half. In Alexander's place, he's been told to go into midfield, play as a midfielder, right? Now he's an extra midfielder to the opposition. But if he's playing as a midfielder without being the extra man, now he has to make room for himself as the midfielder. Now, whether he can do that or not, I don't know. But certainly at the moment, it's like playing the left back in the opposition or the centre.
So it's not. If they were to move him there full time, it's just a totally different scenario he'll find himself in, and a totally different impact he'd have to make in it.
Totally different, Nathan. If you're the right back, you're the right back, and you've got three midfield players. Okay, the opposition are marking those three midfield players as tightly as they can, but then the full back comes into that position. He's an extra one, right? So there's nobody there to pick him up from that, unless the other opposition put their right back in there.
Yeah.
To do it. So he's the extra man all the time. When you're the extra man all the time, then you don't have to make the room for yourself that ordinary midfield players have to make. So you gain in one way, but you lose in the other way, right? And you see what happens with Alexander, it goes on his stats. His stats are very good for making goals and maybe scoring the odd goal, right? But there's no stats on Liverpool conceding goals from him not being in the right back position. That doesn't happen because it's very hard to tell whether the goal
He's not making the
there.
mistake. He's not there.
Yeah.
Just on that game then on Monday night, I think over the last, certainly the last time I was on with you, we were talking about Leeds, you felt they probably just about would have enough this season.
Yeah.
They've taken 2 almighty beatings at Elland Road. They've now conceded 60 goals this season, more than any other side in the Premier League. They're 2 points ahead of Nottingham Forest outside the relegation zone. Are you starting to get worried?
Yeah. Totally. 2 matches home, conceding 11 goals, scored in 2. Bad, Nathan. I didn't think this would happen. You know, I thought, they won't win everything, but they'll have enough to do it. And that hasn't happened in the last 2 weeks in a big way. It's not as if you're like beaten 1-0 or 2-1 or you were unlucky. That hasn't been the case. Just defensively, just total disaster. Total disaster.
They are missing players, and Patrick Bamford and Tyler Adams were sitting in the stand on Monday night, so there's quality not there, but it almost seemed that once Liverpool got that first goal, that there's no leadership there at all. They just sort of collapsed.
There's nothing. I think in the way they play and have played for the last couple of years, Nathan, they're never going to defend well. But what they do have is an awful lot of attacking players that keeps them off defending. It's go all the time, right? That hasn't happened in the last couple of matches, and I think they've always been bad defensively, but teams couldn't get at them that much to
almost a similar situation to Liverpool. At the back, the midfield is letting them down. There's no protection there anymore.
Yeah, but it was different the other way. And again, you go back to Alexander, who played extremely well. He's probably my man of the match because of what he did in the midfield. That's like I don't mean that as a contradiction to what I'm actually saying. I don't believe that can happen in every game. It can happen and happen against Leeds. But Leeds, even in this season, last season, even under Bielsa, they never defended well, Nathan. But they were never defending that much. Especially at home, it was go, and scored quite a lot of freedom to do it, and scored.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.